What's poppin', y'all? Today we're going to talk about how the NFL convinced Jay-Z to partner up with them. This is the 13th episode in my series on the 48 Laws of Power, where we connect one story from each chapter to something that happened in real life, either in hip-hop or music in general. The NFL is the one that approached Jay-Z multiple times and have gone through negotiations until they came to a deal. So the main points we will be going over is why they want to work with him and how they got him to work with them. If you like analysis videos on hip hop and the music business, then subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell right now. If you're enjoying the series, there's a free link to listen to the audiobook on Audible in the description if you're the type of person that doesn't like to read. Law 13 is as follows. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. If you need to turn to an ally for help, do not bother to remind him of your past assistance and good deeds. He will find a way to ignore you. Instead, uncover something in your request or in your alliance with him that will benefit him and emphasize it out of all proportion. He will respond enthusiastically when he sees something to be gained for himself. The story for today happens in 433 BC, before the Peloponnesian War. There was an island called Corcyra, and there was a conflict about to erupt between them and the Greek city-state of Corinth. Both sides sent their own ambassadors to Athens to try and win over the Athenians to support them, because whoever got their support was pretty much guaranteed victory, and whoever won the war was not going to be showing any mercy to the losing side. Talk about a high-pressure situation for these ambassadors, but the one sent by Corcyra was the first to plead their case. The ambassador began by admitting that Corcyra had never helped Athens before, and they had even been allied with previous enemies of Athens. Not too good of a start. There was no friendship, gratitude, or positive history between Athens or Corcyra, but he was now coming to Athens concerned with the safety of his island. The only thing he could offer Athens was an alliance that was mutually beneficial. Corcyra had the second strongest navy at the time, and the only one stronger was Athens. So an alliance between the two would be a force that could not be reckoned with. It would even strike fear in Athens' rival, the Spartans. But that was all the island had to offer. Next up was the ambassador for Corinth, who gave by all measures a strong, passionate speech, entirely the opposite of the stale and straight to the point approach of Corcyra's representative. The ambassador for Corinth spoke about all the things that his city-state had done for Athens in the past, and how ridiculous Athens would look to their other allies if they allied themselves with Corcyra, who was a former enemy, other than a longtime friend who had served them in the past, being Corinth. The man continued saying that those other allies might break their agreements with Athens if they saw they didn't value loyalty, and then referred to Hellenic law that said they needed to repay Corinth for all the good deeds it did for Athens. And then towards the end, he listed all the services Corinth did and how important it was to show gratitude. After both speeches were over, the Athenians got together in a room to debate which they should side with, and the overwhelming majority voted to ally with Corcyra and toss Corinth to the side. You might be asking, why the hell would they do that? That's so ungrateful for all that Corinth did for them. They should want to return the favor and support them now that they're in need. Well, the Athenians were the realists during this time period in Greece. There was no amount of talking, passion, or emotional appeals that could even come close to a solid logical argument, especially one that was in their favor and granted them more power. The Athenians may have been grateful for Corinth, but when the ambassador gave his speech and continuously referenced their past generosity to Athens, it only frustrated the Athenians because he was basically asking them to feel guilty and force them to support him. The Athenians were realists, so they could care less about the past favors and feelings. And while they did consider the possibility that their other allies would consider them ungrateful for ditching Corinth, those city-states wouldn't dare break their ties to Athens because Athens was the most powerful force in Greece. Athens ruled by force, and if any of their allies wanted to try and rebel, they would put them in their place and things would go back to normal. Corcyra just came up and said, here's exactly what we can offer you, and it worked. When people choose to talk about the past and the future, the logical person is going to go for the future and forget the past. Corsyrans knew it was always best to speak pragmatically to that type of person, and in this type of situation, most people are rational thinking. Rarely will someone ever act against their own best interest when given the option. This relates back to how the NFL did a deal with Jay-Z, which many people saw as a surprise. The NFL couldn't possibly just come up to Jay-Z and say they did something for him, because they never did anything for him. Not only that, but he was also supporting Colin Kaepernick, who had caused them a ton of problems in the press and the eyes of a demographic of people that were viewers. While the NFL didn't necessarily get hurt from a profitability standpoint, I had read an article on Forbes this year that said the NFL ratings were way higher this year and only in a trajectory to continue growing. But the NFL knows how important their image is to them, and they knew that the best way to get that demographic of people that Colin Kaepernick had riled up was to get someone who was way more popular and beloved, and that was Jay-Z. Now the NFL knew they had to appeal to Jay-Z's self-interest. After all, he was going to get criticism at first for teaming up with the NFL when he not only supported Colin Kaepernick's kneeling and the other players that followed, but also declined to perform at the Super Bowl and encouraged others to decline. They knew that Jay-Z loves money and he loves power. He wants to be in control, just like with his music career, which I outlined the history of Rockefeller Records in a previous episode of this series that you should definitely check out. The deal with the NFL includes Jay-Z's Roc Nation Sports to work with the league on social justice initiatives and entertainment programming, including the Super Bowl halftime show. There's no exact specific details. Many people were speculating that Jay-Z was becoming part owner of a team, but that was denied publicly by both parties very quickly. Jay-Z had encouraged other music artists such as Rihanna to opt out of the Super Bowl halftime show, but now he's going to be taking money and organizing the show himself, putting social justice forward. But this isn't the first time Jay-Z has done something like this. He did a documentary by the title The Khalif Browder Story and Rest in Power, The Trayvon Martin Story, which he executive produced alongside a name you might be familiar with, Harvey Weinstein, who he would later sue for his unpaid royalties. They removed Weinstein from the credits in his company, but he was heavily involved. So Jay-Z had already produced 2 big documentaries on social issues. The NFL realized he had pull in that area and teamed up with him. But of course, Jay-Z was asked, what about Kaepernick? And to that, he said in a quote, "I think that we forgot that Colin's whole thing was to bring attention to social injustice. So in that case, this is a success. This is the next thing. There's 2 parts of protest. The protest, and then there's a company or individual saying, I hear you. What do we do next? For me, it's about actionable items. What are we going to do about it? We get stuck on Colin not having a job. You know what I'm saying? I'm into action. I'm into real work. I'm not into how it looks from the outside. If protesting on the field is the most effective way, then protest on the field. But if you have a vehicle that can inspire change and speak to the masses at the same time, it's hard to steal the narrative away." Do we know Jay-Z's intentions? Absolutely not. But it hasn't stopped many people from speculating on whether or not he truly cares or if he's just using these issues to set himself up in a position to make a move that ultimately benefits him more than anyone else. This wouldn't be the first time, considering when Tidal was just beginning to be pushed out to the masses, he continuously preached about the importance of ownership and turned his business into some sort of social justice initiative in itself, telling everyone to support a black-owned streaming service, until there were big rumors that Jay-Z was considering selling Tidal to a competing streaming service for a huge lump sum of cash and exit. Although that hasn't happened, it may be that the other streaming services, mainly Apple and Spotify, realized that Tidal wasn't enough of a threat in the current moment to want to buy them out, or Jay-Z doesn't feel like they offered him enough. Dame Dash is another individual who during an interview with No Jumper had words to say about Jay-Z, saying that he's not surprised by this behavior at all. It's normal for Jay-Z, and everyone in the industry knows Jay-Z is like this, and that he's only after a check and his own self-interest. But when asked about the actual deal with the NFL, he made a good point in that he doesn't even know what the exact specifics of the deal are, so how can he possibly speak on or have an opinion on something he doesn't have any information on? There is a reversal to this law, and it reads, "Some people will see an appeal to their self-interest as ugly and ignoble. They actually prefer to be able to exercise charity, mercy, and justice, which are their ways of feeling superior to you. When you beg them for help, you emphasize their power and position. They are strong enough to need nothing from you except the chance to feel superior. This is the wine that intoxicates them. They are dying to fund your project, trying to introduce you to powerful people, provided, of course, that all this is done in public and for a good cause. Usually, the more public, the better. Not everyone, then, can be approached through cynical self-interest. Some people will be put off by it because they don't want to seem to be motivated by such things. They need opportunities to display their good heart. Do not be shy. Give them that opportunity. It's not as if you are conning them by asking for help. It's really their pleasure to give and to be seen giving. You must distinguish the differences among powerful people and figure out what makes them tick. When they ooze greed, do not appeal to their charity. When they want to look charitable and noble, do not appeal to their greed. This reversal is very hard to attach to a specific artist or event because we can never really know the intentions. For example, sometimes a person may want to do something charitable and would feel insulted if it had to do with money, and the same person in a different time could only want something for their monetary self-interest. But a decent example of this is the underground rap scene. There are a handful of music artists who refuse to ever get signed to a major deal, even though they've been offered tons of money. Think Suicide Boys, for instance, or Sesh Hollow Water Boys. They'd much rather be underground legends and publicly get credit for the fact that they stayed true to the cause. Because at the time they were coming up, being independent was a lot more difficult than it is right now. And to sign, while I don't think their fan base would necessarily care too much, it would go against what they hold true to themselves and the message they want to represent. Because the truth is, Suicide Boys could be a lot bigger if they signed and have probably been offered a ridiculous bag or advance by major labels, but they don't care about the money and never did. They just wanted enough to live and do music, and they've got far more than that now on their own. Welcome to episode 14 of my series on the 48 Laws of Power, and today we're going to talk about how Nardwuar is able to get such high-profile interviews. Nardwuar isn't some huge platform with connections compared to, say, a radio station, yet he has been able to pull interviews with huge people like Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, Drake, and others that rarely ever choose to do interviews, with the reactions from them that can't be found anywhere else. Pharrell had said his interview with him was one of the greatest he's ever done. If you like analysis videos on hip-hop and the music business, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell right now. Law 14 is as follows. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Knowing about your rival is critical. Use spies to gather valuable information that will keep you a step ahead. Better still, play the spy yourself. In polite social encounters, learn to probe. Ask indirect questions to get people to reveal their weaknesses and intentions. There is no occasion that is not an opportunity for artful spying. The story we're looking at from this chapter is of an art dealer by the name of Joseph Duveen, who was known as the greatest art dealer of his time in the first half of the 20th century and the end of the 19th. He had almost monopolized the millionaire art collecting market by himself, but there was one person who he wasn't able to add to his clientele, and that was Andrew Mellon. The college Carnegie Mellon is named after him, and Carnegie, of course, after Andrew Carnegie. But Duveen's friends told him this was going to be an impossible task. Mellon was a reserved man that didn't speak too much, and the stories he heard about Duveen were about someone who was very salesy and spoke a lot. This gave Mellon the impression he wasn't someone he wanted to meet, and he made it clear to everyone. But Duveen didn't get this far in his career by taking no for an answer. He told his friends, and I quote, "Not only will Mellon buy from me, but he will buy only from me." And the next couple of years, he watched Mellon, learning his tastes, habits, and fears. To accomplish this task, he paid several of Mellon's staff, getting valuable information from them, and by the time he was ready to strike, he knew Mellon as well as his own wife. In 1921, Mellon was visiting London and staying at a suite on the third floor of a hotel, and Duveen booked himself at that same hotel just one floor below him. He arranged for his own valet driver to befriend Mellon's valet driver, and on the day he was going to make his move, he was informed from Mellon's valet driver that he just helped Mellon with his overcoat, and he was heading down the corridor to ring for the elevator. Duveen had his own overcoat put on and entered the elevator that Mellon was in, and he greeted him. "How do you do, Mr. Mellon? I'm on my way to the National Gallery to look at some pictures." What a coincidence, but not really, because that was exactly where Mellon was going. This allowed for Duveen to follow Mellon to the one place he knew would guarantee success. After all, He spent a long time studying Mellon's tastes inside and out, and while they walked around the museum, he wowed Mellon with his knowledge and similar taste. Mellon was really surprised. He had a totally different idea of who Duveen was. This guy wasn't overly talkative or pushy. He was agreeable and very charming, with great taste. When they both came back to New York, Mellon visited Duveen's gallery and loved the collection. Of course, this collection was specifically catered to Mellon's exact taste and what he would want to collect. And for the rest of his life, Mellon became Duveen's best client. Joseph Duveen made sure to leave nothing up to chance. He wasn't going to just talk to clients and hope he would be able to charm them, when instead he could position himself with just a little knowledge and increase his closing rate. Mellon was one of the biggest, but Duveen did this with many millionaires. He would secretly put the staff of his potential client's household on his own payroll, which gave him constant access to valuable information about where their boss was coming and going, what their taste was, and other information that put him far ahead of any other art dealer. Other dealers saw him as someone who seemed to be everywhere, but at the exact right time, and he knew everything before they did. Eventually, most of them just gave up going after the wealthy clientele because they just couldn't match him. They thought he had some sort of sixth sense. And this is almost exactly how Nardwuar operates. Just the reactions on the faces of the people he interviews are a massive contrast from the dull mood they're in when they're doing any other podcast or interview. Many interviewers, especially the radio interviews like Hot 97 or The Breakfast Club, not only come unprepared to an interview, as is the case with The Breakfast Club when 6ix9ine absolutely embarrassed them, but they come unprepared and create a hostile environment for the artist. They're looking for some headline to title their interview, which there's nothing wrong with, but it's usually at the expense of the artist. They'll purposely cut a clip out of context that makes the artist look ridiculous, or as if he or she said something they didn't really say, and they get attacked. In the case of Hot 97, it's usually Ebro grilling a young artist, leaving a sour taste in their mouth, and of course, they're not going to be happy or share anything when they don't even feel welcome. These interviews will always consist of asking questions from something controversial or negative that has happened in the artist's past or is currently happening that they know the artist likely doesn't want to talk about. And artists have learned the tactics these radio interviews use, so once they know they got to go there for their promo run, their guard is up before the first question is even asked. In the totally opposite approach, much like Duveen, Nardwuar is calculated and gathers the most obscure information about the artist like an actual spy. Things that nobody else knows, some of which can't even be found on the internet, but he manages to dig them up, and we have no idea how he does it. Many people say he speaks to their family, but one instance is when he talked to Ugly God about recycling, and he was in shock because only him and his mother knew about that. And he even asked his mom later on if anyone spoke to her about it before the interview, and she said no. Us as the viewers see Nardwuar as having some sixth sense or being the feds, but he's an incredibly good spy, and we have no idea how he does it. Also, unlike radio interviews and similar to Duveen, he's not trying to get a headline. His videos are always just titled Nardwuar versus Artist, and he never brings up anything negative that the artist would feel uncomfortable or change their mood. He's always making sure they're in a good mood because that's how you get a client if you were an art dealer, which Nardwuar is not, but instead of collecting art, he collects favors. Nardwuar also has an entire script for how the interview is going to go, instead of hopping around everywhere like most of these radio interviews, and he's strict with that script. He controls the frame of all the conversations, and if someone tries to veer off, he makes sure he pulls them right back into topic. He keeps the mood of the interviews very lighthearted. He wants the artist to remember their experience with him as unique and in a positive light, and what better way than to give them gifts? But not just any gift, but a gift that's usually a record that references something they loved in their childhood or something that they currently love now, but usually a memory, and it brings them a lot of joy. They've likely never received a gift from an interviewer before, and definitely not one that's so meaningful. So you might be asking, well, Joseph Duveen gets clients from his spying, and that makes him a ton of money. What is the benefit for Nardwuar doing this spying since he isn't really getting paid a ridiculous amount of money? Well, Nardwuar benefits by building all of these connections that have a positive memory with him and would love to do him a favor. And the favor he usually requests is an interview with someone who is difficult to get an interview with. For example, when he did an interview with NERD and Pharrell was really impressed, he asked Pharrell if he would be able to get Jay-Z to do an interview with him, and it worked. And with Lil Wayne, it was Drake who got the interview for Nardwuar. And Drake is not easy to impress. He hates interviews and has rarely ever done any this entire decade. And leading up to the release of Views in 2016, Nardwuar was the only long-form interview that Drake did at over an hour long, but it's also the only interview he did in promotion for that album at all, other than Beats One, which is, of course, because he was signed to a deal with Apple Music, and this was likely a part of it. But the interview on Nardwuar with both him and 40, a very rare sight, was totally by his own choice. And it shows us Drake in a totally different light, like a regular person, because he even said he can just let his guard down and relax around Nardwuar because he knows he doesn't have some sort of agenda that will make any artist he interviews look bad. The reversal to this law says, information is critical to power, but just as you spy on other people, you must be prepared for them to spy on you. One of the most potent weapons in the battle for information, then, is giving out false information. As Winston Churchill said, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. You must surround yourself with such a bodyguard, so that your truth cannot be penetrated. By planning the information of your choice, you control the game. This is a lesson that Drake had to learn the hard way 2 times, once with Meek Mill and once with Pusha T. In the context of this chapter, being a spy doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, and it may not even be intentional. In the case of Duveen and Nardwuar, it is intentional, but most friends are spies. And earlier in the chapter it says that one of the most effective ways is to be friends, because friends tell each other everything, or almost everything. And in the case of Meek Mill, revealing Drake's secret that he had a ghostwriter, up until that moment, Meek and Drake were good friends. They had collaborated on several songs together, and Drake decided he trusted him enough that he was able to know that Drake had a writer. And Drake likely expected he wouldn't reveal that. But Meek Mill got incredibly emotional over something as trivial as the lack of a retweet of his album, and revealed one of the most devastating blows to Drake's legacy as a rapper and songwriter. The truth is that, even with friendships, revealing the truth as stated in the reversal is very dangerous. Because with people, once the opportunity comes for them to benefit from revealing your secret, they'll likely do so. And if you're no longer friends, and they're very emotional, it's almost a guarantee. To expect people to live up to their promises or have a code of honor is the expectation of a fool. It's better to be conveniently surprised than devastatingly surprised. The same thing happened with Pusha T, but we have no legitimate information on how this information was obtained. But what happened was that Drake had to have told somebody, and then that person clearly didn't keep it to themselves if it managed to reach Pusha T. Likely through the classic case of someone telling someone else something secret and making them promise not to tell anyone else, but that person ends up telling someone and asking them not to tell anyone, and before you know it, it's circled all the way around. And while this wasn't as damaging to Drake's legacy because it had nothing to do with his music or skill as an artist, it was an embarrassing moment and swung the beef in Pusha T's favor. For his sake, hopefully Drake learned to be much more secretive with his truths, and guarding them with a force field of either lies or half-truths. Because a man in his position can trust absolutely no one, other than perhaps a LeBron James, someone who's in the same caliber of success that knows how difficult it is to trust people. Today it's going to be about 50 Cent and Ja Rule, probably the longest running beef of all time. It's older than many people. This is also the first episode of this series in which the person we talk about explicitly admits that they're using one of these laws. In the clapback interlude by 50 Cent on the No Peace Talks G-Unit mixtape in 2003, he says, "I might have to go see the minister and explain to him why I can't let up off you, Ja. You know what I mean? It's against my religion to let a nigga survive. You know what I mean? It's in the laws of power, baby. You know what I mean? When you destroy completely." We'll briefly go over a story from the chapter and then how it ties into this beef. so stay tuned until the end. If you like analysis videos on hip hop and the music business, then subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell right now. And if you don't like reading, there's a link in the description to a free trial of Audible where you can listen to the book for free. Law 15 reads, "Crush your enemy totally. All great leaders since Moses have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. Sometimes they have learned this the hard way. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and will seek revenge. Crush him not only in body, but in spirit." Today we're going to talk about a rivalry between two Chinese leaders, Shang Yu and Liu Pang. They both fought alongside each other and started off as close friends. Shang Yu was from a noble upper-class family. He had a short temper and was inclined to violence. Not too bright up in the head, but he was very big and strong, and that fought in the front with the troops. Liu Pang, on the other hand, came from a peasant family. He was never too much of a soldier and would rather have hoes and drink wine than fight, but he was very clever. He could spot out the best strategists, and he would keep them as advisors and actually listen to them. And that's how he rose up in the army. In 208 BC, the king of Chu sent two armies to conquer the kingdom of Qin. One army went north and was led by the general Sung Yi, and Shang Yu was second in command, and the other army was led by Liu Pang, that was headed straight to Qin. Their aim was the capital of the kingdom, Shenyang, and Shang Yu, being the violent and impatient man that he was, could not stand the fact that Liu Pang would get to the capital first and likely become commander of the entire army. So at one point in the north, Sung Yi was a little hesitant in sending the troops to battle, and Shang Yu was mad. So mad that he entered the general's tent, declared him a traitor, cut off his head, and took the commanding role for himself. He didn't wait for any orders, left the northern front, which was supposed to be his army's post, and headed directly to the capital, Shenyang. He felt like he was the better soldier in general than his rival Liu Pang. But shockingly, Liu reached the capital first with a smaller and quicker army. One of Shang Yu's advisors, by the name of Fan Sang, told him, "This village headman," in reference to Liu Pang, "used to be greedy only for money and women. But ever since he got into the capital, he has not fallen into these vices. That shows he's aiming much higher." He urged Shang to kill Liu before it was too late. He urged him to invite the former peasant to a feast at their camp outside the capital, and during the celebratory swords dance, have his head cut off. They sent the invitation, and Liu fell for the trap. He decided to attend the feast, but Shang was hesitant in ordering the sword dance, and once he gave the signal, it was too late. Liu felt that it was a trap, and he managed to get out of there. The advisor was frustrated. "One cannot plan with a simpleton. Liu Pang will steal your empire yet and make us all his prisoners," he said. Shang knew he made a mistake and quickly marched to the capital. This time he intended on returning with Liu's head. Liu, knowing that he wasn't the greatest soldier and someone who never fought when the odds weren't in his favor, abandoned the city. So Shang captured the capital, killed the Prince of Qin, and burned the entire city to the ground. Liu was his arch rival now, and he chased him for months until he finally got him cornered in a walled city. With no food and his army a mess, Liu asked for peace. His advisor once again told Shang to crush him and show no mercy, or he would regret it. But Shang decided to show him mercy and wanted to bring Liu back alive and force his old friend to acknowledge him as master. But this egotistical move proved stupid, and Liu used the negotiations they were having for his surrender as a smokescreen to escape with a small army. Shang was shocked he escaped again, and this time the only thing on his mind became Liu, until he captured Liu's father in battle and yelled across the battlefield, "Surrender now, or I'll boil your father alive." And Liu just replied, "But we are sworn brothers, so my father is your father also. If you insist on boiling your own father, send me a bowl of the soup." And Shang actually fell for this and backed out. Back on the hunt, and only a few weeks later, Shang split up his forces in an unwise move that allowed for Liu to make a surprise attack and surround him. For the first time ever, things were in reverse. And this time, Shang was asking for peace. And in the same breath, Liu's advisor told him it was time to crush him and show no mercy. And Liu agreed. He made a false peace treaty with Shang and lured him into easing up his defenses and then slaughtered his entire army. Shang barely escaped, alone, and he knew he had a bounty on his head. So once he found a group of his own soldiers that were retreating, he told them, "I hear Liu Peng has offered 1,000 pieces of gold and a fief of 10,000 families for my head. Let me do you a favor." And he slit his own throat and died. Shang Yu was a merciless leader. He would kill droves of people even after they had peacefully surrendered. There was one time when he ordered 200,000 Qin troops to be buried alive after they had already surrendered. But his one weakness was friendship. It was the reason why he continuously spared Liu Peng and ended up taking his own life so that one of his close friends could claim the bounty on his head. How does this relate to 50 Cent and Ja Rule? Well, 50 Cent is merciless in his beefs, and unlike Shang Yu, doesn't have a soft spot for former friends. Let's look into the history of his beef with Ja Rule so you can get a vivid picture. I think you really had to be born in the 80s or maybe early 90s to really understand just how big Ja Rule was in the late 90s and early 2000s. Today his name rings off as nothing more than the butt of a joke to most people, but things weren't always that way. He was the premier artist for Irv Gotti's Murder Inc. Records, his imprint under Def Jam. He released the debut single, Holla Holla, which would peak at number 35 on the Hot 100, and would release his debut album, Veni Vedi Vici, in 1999, that peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200, and eventually went platinum from the success of the single, Holla Holla. At the same time is when the beef between the two began brewing. The exact origins are hazy, with 50 Cent having said that Ja Rule was mad that 50 Cent was hanging out with the guy that robbed Ja Rule at gunpoint for his chain. Ja Rule confirmed the robbery, but said he never saw 50 Cent with that man, and says 50 is mad because he was snubbed by the Murder Inc. crew during Ja Rule's video shoot for his single Murder for Life. Keep in mind, this is 1999. Ja Rule is on top, and 50 Cent is still on the come up, and arguably a nobody in the greater scheme of things. But he was waging war on not only Ja Rule, but all of Murder Inc. 50 Cent released the song Life's on the Line in October of 1999 that had a music video along with it, and while he doesn't name drop Ja Rule, you could put two and two together. He blatantly chants "Murder, murder, your life's on the line," and it would be a hit song in the hood, but it wasn't anything close to the reach that Ja Rule was having with his debut album. After this, 50 Cent and Ja Rule bumped into each other at a nightclub in Atlanta they were booked to perform at. Almost like this promoter was booking a UFC main card, not a music performance. But he got one, and the two New York rappers got into an argument and a scuffle, physical altercation, where both of their chains dropped, but a member of 50's crew was able to get Ja Rule's and recover 50's. And later on, 50 Cent said that a deal was made to return Ja Rule's chain for a Movado watch, but Ja Rule says that never happened. But what is said is that Ja Rule was left with a black eye and was wearing sunglasses and avoiding any video interviews for a while after that. G-Unit and Murder Inc. would meet again in March 2000 at a studio in New York City. When Ja Rule and his team heard that 50 was over there recording, they pulled up, which led to a fight that ended with 50 Cent getting stabbed, and the rest of Ja Rule and Black Child, who was another rapper on Murder Inc., that took credit for the stabbing. 50 Cent was not only beneath Ja Rule career-wise at this point, but he had also been stabbed by his team. Things weren't looking too hot. That was until 50 Cent and G-Unit dropped their first mixtape, No Mercy, No Fear, after he signed a $1 million deal with Shady and Aftermath Records in August of 2002. And one of the most popular tracks from this tape was Wanksta, that 50 Cent said was inspired by Ja Rule and would become his first hit song, peaking at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. He was coming up on Ja Rule fast. A couple of months later in November of that same year, Irv Gotti said that 50 Cent had signed an order of protection against both him and Ja Rule after the stabbing that happened at the studio. An order of protection is basically a court order that tells one person or multiple people what they can't do to another person, what type of contact is allowed or not allowed. It's basically a restraining order. Irv mentioned this on none other than the star and Buck Wild morning show, the radio show host that had a short stint alongside DJ Academics on Everyday Struggle. This was an attempt to paint 50 as an informant and ruin his street credibility, but he just denied it and sidestepped the whole thing. It didn't do much to harm his upwards trajectory. After this, 50 Cent replied on the G-Unit mixtape, The Future Is Now, that had multiple tracks dedicated to clowning Murder Inc., with several skits that mocked Ja Rule's singing. I Smell Pussy was one of the hottest and played everywhere. I remember us at the lunch table, tiny little kids rapping along to that song. 50 Cent calls out by name Irv Gotti, Black Child, Cadillac Ta, and Ja Rule before going into the other verses of what was supposed to be a love song, but 50 had to get his diss in first. It's January 18th, 2003, and to ring in the new year, what better celebration than a shooting? An unknown gunman opened fire in the offices of Violator Records and Management, Chris Lighty's company, which was handling 50 Cent's career at the time. And while no employees or artists ended up getting hurt, and no arrests were made, this had to do with the beef between 50 and Ja Rule, and this was definitely not going to slow down anytime soon. The next month, February 6, 2003, was the tipping point. 50 Cent released his debut album, Get Rich or Die Tryin', that went number 1 and loved by everyone. One of the tracks on here was Back Down, which is what most people will agree embarrassed Ja Rule and Murder Inc. so badly it was the end of Ja Rule's career. With lines like, "You never gonna sell Mitsubishi Ta, Crack Child, them niggas dead, they just suck, they no good, I ain't never heard niggas say they like 'em in the hood," in reference to Cadillac Ta and Black Child of Murder Inc. And he wasn't wrong. Neither of them ever released an album. And with vicious lines like, "Your mammy, your pappy, that hoe you chasing, your little dirty ass kids, I'll effing erase 'em." The kind of shots that the new pussies that are listening to rap would start shivering and saying it's too far. At the outro of the track, and shout outs to DJ Vlad for this information, but a station, and Dre had gotten a soundbite that said, "Y'all better leave Jeffrey Atkins alone, that's my boo." And they got Alex Thomas from the Jamie Foxx show to do the outro of the track, Back Down, and purposely left his name off the credits of the album, and he did an impression as if he was this person that had called up to a radio show talking about Jeffrey Atkins, which was Ja Rule. So they didn't even know if this was real or not. In April of that same year, after almost 2 months of silence, Ja Rule released the diss track Loose Change, where he not only disses 50 Cent and G-Unit, but he decides to bring in Eminem, Dr. Dre, Busta Rhymes, and Chris Lighty, even taking shots at Eminem's daughter Haley. This track was hard, and also the kind of track starting out with "these faggot ass niggas" and referring to Eminem as Feminem, which had me dying as a child. If this track were to release today, all these wimps listening to hip hop now would need some medication for how soft they are mentally. Ending the track with, "You claim your mother's a crackhead, and Kim is a known slut. So what's Haley gonna be when she grows up?" But anybody could have told you, dissing Busta Rhymes in 2003, and Eminem, and Dr. Dre, and 50 Cent, this was like taking on an army. Only a week after Loose Change, and the nail in the coffin for Ja Rule's already dead career, was when 50 Cent, Eminem, and Busta hopped on the classic Tupac beat for Hail Mary. This was a diss in twofold because Ja Rule was a huge fan of Tupac, and they were hopping on one of his biggest tracks to diss him. Ja Rule would come back with Guess Who Shot Ya, which really didn't hit at all, and then in November of 2003, released his 5th album, Blood in My Eye, that was almost entirely about 50 Cent and G-Unit, with the single Clapback that did alright. It was very different from the more singing or melodic R&B type of Ja Rule. This was really aggressive, but it flopped, both commercially and in the eyes of the critics. Ja Rule was finished after this, and 50 Cent could have left things alone, but he didn't. In 2004, 50 Cent said that Ja Rule was finished and he ended his career. In his eyes, the beef was over. Ja Rule also said the beef was over, but he said he was still getting crazy love from the people, and the beef didn't really harm him at all. And then 50 Cent took the opportunity at Summer Jam in 2004 to give out the Granny Awards, which was the wackest rappers of that year, and the list was Joe Budden, Lil Kim, Black Child, and of course, Ja Rule. But 50 Cent wasn't headlining this year, so he wasn't going to be the last one to perform. R. Kelly was going to come after him, and 50 Cent had heard that R. Kelly was going to bring Ja Rule out. At the end of his set, 50 Cent asked the audience if they were ready to see R. Kelly, and of course the crowd yelled yes. Who wouldn't? But then he took his opportunity to clown R. Kelly for the pissing case he had going on at the time. In an interview, 50 Cent said there was a chance he was bringing Ja Rule out, so he damaged the chance before he even had the opportunity. I said what I said, and 60% of the building left with us. And he came in later and did his set. He didn't bring Ja Rule in, but he could have. And I had to do it to him because he could have. 50 Cent takes this law to the extreme. Just the possibility from a rumor that Ja Rule was going to perform as a headliner, which may reignite his career, 50 Cent was willing to shoot at R. Kelly, take shots at him, who he had nothing personal against, as collateral damage, just to make sure if Ja Rule was coming out, he would look bad. Ja Rule had the song Wonderful in 2004 that peaked at number 5 on the Hot 100, so people were whispering, is this a comeback that we're seeing from Ja Rule? And in 2006, Ja Rule released the track 21 Guns, trying to spark up the flame of the old beef with 50 Cent, in hopes of promoting his new album, but 50 Cent knew better and didn't respond this time. A while later, in 2011, Ja Rule pled guilty to federal tax evasion, which meant he was going to serve 2 years in prison, and there's no better time to kick someone than when they're down. And 50 Cent took this opportunity, following this law, and made fun of Ja Rule in a series of tweets. Damn, the homie Ja Rule gotta do 2 years. Tell him I said don't worry, I got him when he come home, lol. Yo, word to my mother, if anybody knock Ja out and F him in jail, it's gonna be on, lol. Y'all know I'm as crazy as hell, so don't mess with my little homie Ja, lol. I'm well connected. I'ma say it again. I'm well connected. Don't F with my little homie Ja. And this baits Ja Rule to reply saying, nigga, you pussy. Shut up before I smack you in your mouth again. LOL. The nerve of some niggas. And 50 Cent replies cleverly and innocently. You see, I was just trying to lick out the homie. Now he mad at me. Why? LOL. I don't wish jail on nobody. Stay strong, you little punk. The tweets I wrote were funny till I thought about who's gonna take care of his kids. We ain't gonna forget about you, little man. LOL. And after serving his time and getting out, in September of 2013, Ja Rule does an interview alongside Irv Gotti with Angie Martinez. He admits that they took the L in the war between G-Unit and Murder Inc. for many different reasons, but a huge one being the federal investigation into the record label that they spent over $10 million on. 2 short months later, Ja Rule and 50 Cent cross paths on a flight for the first time in a long time, and Ja Rule says there's no longer any problems between the two, tweeting, "What are the chances me and 50, same flight, same row, no problems? For all those who want nothing more than 2 successful black men to kill each other, kill yourself. It may have been over for Ja, but it's never over for 50. 50 Cent was one of the headliners for the annual Summer Jam concert in 2014, and he decides to perform the diss track, I Smell Pussy. Reminder that this concert is held in New York, both of their hometown. And once Ja Rule got noise of this, he tweets out, "This nigga been on my dick, he love my style." Nas voice. LMFAO 100 emoji, and then accuses 50 Cent of being an informant, saying that 50 Cent helped lead the feds to their investigation into Murder Inc. and their connection to Supreme, who was a drug kingpin in Queens. After the hilarious Fyre Festival controversy that Ja Rule was involved with in 2017, 50 Cent took the opportunity to tweet a picture of the tents and Ja Rule, captioning it, "This is what you get for going to anything with this bum involved." Keep in mind, Ja Rule has been seen as a joke for so long in the public eye, this is like beating a dead horse. But 50 Cent doesn't want to give him an ounce of air to breathe. And every time Ja Rule responds, he gets clowned, like in the series of tweets that followed. "I see I still get under your skirt, 50 Cent. My battle was like LeBron versus Golden State. Niggas was teaming up to take me on, LMAO, goat emoji. I don't think there's ever been a rap beef when 4 of the top rappers go at one guy. 50, M, Busta, DMX, LMAO, the more I think about it, hashtag GOAT rule. If you a 50 Cent fan, you don't love yourself. Nothing that Ja Rule said was wrong here, disregarding his last tweet, although he did call out those four in the first place. It was an onslaught against him. Imagine Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick, and Eminem coming together to diss Meek Mill or Big Sean. That's what it was like at the time, but nobody wants to hear that. They just laughed him off. In the fall of 2018, one of Ja Rule's shows in Syracuse got canceled, and 50 Cent once again hopped on to crush him even further. He wrote, "Only 10 tickets sold. Don't nobody want to see that. You talking about, wait, we got a lot of people on the walk up. Get the hell out of here. Get the strap." And then in November of 2018, 50 Cent claimed he bought 200 tickets at $15 each for a Ja Rule concert. He wrote, "I just bought 200 seats in the front so they can be empty. LOL." And for some reason, it wasn't until August of 2019 that Ja Rule decides to bring this up and tweets, "This clown emoji, 50 Cent is the pathological liar. I'll cash app 10 bands to anybody who has pics or footage of said show Bozo bought 200 ticks to so it could be empty. I'll wait. Y'all believe anything Goofy tell y'all." Well, Ja Rule, of course nobody would have a picture because nobody goes to a Ja Rule show in 2019. Nah, but on a real note, I replied on Twitter, which you should definitely follow me on. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good joke. I mean, 50 Cent cemented Ja Rule as a joke for over a decade. The whole fire thing didn't help his case. And you'll have a harder time getting people to believe a fact that Ja Rule did something good than a lie, making him look like a clown. And this is the truth, because if you look deep into the history of this beef, which I recommend the video 50 Cent versus Ja Rule by the channel Diverse Mentality, someone who released very good content on this topic, and y'all know it's not often I recommend someone. But he illustrates a handful of inconsistencies in what 50 Cent reports as what happened in the beef, and some that are outright lies. But it doesn't matter because people would rather believe that Ja Rule is a joke and laugh at him than see an alternate truth that this beef may have started just from 50 Cent being the salty one. But that's why he benefited so much from using this law, because he crushed Ja Rule so badly that people won't even consider whether or not what he's saying is true anymore. It doesn't matter what Ja Rule does. He can never, ever recover. The damage that's been done is irreparable, and that's the power that this law has when used appropriately. There is a reversal to this law, and it reads as follows. This law should very rarely be ignored, but it does sometimes happen that it is better to let your enemies destroy themselves, if such a thing is possible, than to make them suffer by your hand. In warfare, for example, a good general knows that if he attacks an army when it is cornered, its soldiers will fight much more fiercely. It is sometimes better, then, to leave them an escape route, a way out. As they retreat, they wear themselves out and are ultimately more demoralized by the retreat than by any defeat he might inflict on the battlefield. When you have someone on the ropes, then, but only when you are sure they have no chance of recovery, you might let them hang themselves. Let them be the agents of their own destruction. The result will be the same, and you won't feel half as bad. There is probably no better story to this than the demise of Space Ghost Perp, who after A$AP Rocky only replied to him a handful of times after their separation, insulting him, decided to completely forget his existence and allow him to continuously self-destruct online, ruining any potential he ever had of recovering to the position he once had in the music world. Every time Space Ghost Perp would talk about A$AP Rocky, the stories would conflict, blaming something else, and never taking any responsibility. And the rumors that he was on some crazy drugs didn't help his case either. But what really continuously harmed him was the fact that everyone surrounding him was abandoning him. It was hard for A$AP Rocky to look like the bad guy when the people who were riding with you against A$AP have abandoned you and are saying that you're out of your mind and hard to deal with. So every time Space Ghost Perp would mention A$AP Rocky, Rocky knew to just let him hurt himself, because to the people that paid attention, which was very few since Space Ghost Perp's audience had dwindled so much at this point, they were seeing it as him still being salty at Rocky's success. This cycle continued and is likely going to happen at least once a year, but Rocky will likely never address him ever again. The damage has been done. Today we're going to be talking about how Birdman saved Lil Wayne's commercial career, and he did it by not letting him release any music. This may seem insane at first. He was holding Wayne back from what we heard and saw, and although it was likely unintentional, Birdman did help him, so stick around until the end to find out exactly how. Law 16 reads, use absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you are already established in a group, temporary withdrawal from it will make you more talked about, even more admired. You must learn when to leave. Create value through scarcity. There's two separate stories told in this chapter, one of which is too potent for me to share on YouTube. But if you do want to read it, or better yet, listen to it for free, there will be a link in the description to a free trial of Audible where you can get this entire book for free. The story we're going to use is one that takes place in what is now known as Iran. The Medes had revolted and broken away from the Assyrian Empire, but now they had to set up a new government. They didn't want to end up in the same situation where one person had all the power, so they deliberated. But during this time, since there was no leader, the country was in shambles. There were different factions and villages fighting amongst each other, which was worse than when they were ruled over. But in one of these villages was a man named Dioces, who built a reputation on him being a fair man and settling arguments between two parties amicably. He was so good at this that any legal conflicts that happened in his area were brought directly to him, and he began to grow in power. One reason for this was because throughout the different villages, the law was taken much less serious. Judges were very corrupt, so the people didn't trust their case to go to court anymore, and would rather handle things themselves, which usually meant violence. So when news was beginning to spread through word of mouth that there was a man who was wise, incorruptible, and unbiased, all the Median villages began to turn to him to settle their cases, and he became the one to hand out justice to the land. But at his peak, when he had the most power, Dioces just had enough. He was no longer going to listen to any more suits, settle any more problems between brothers or villages, and he complained that he was spending so much of his time dealing with other people's problems that he neglected his own life. He retired, just like Michael Jordan at his peak. Now, once he stopped, things went back to the way they were and crime increased. The country was in shambles, and the people had no reason to trust the corrupt lawmakers since he was gone. The high-ranking members of each village of Media had a meeting to talk about how they were going to fix this problem. One of the leaders said, "We cannot continue to live in this country under these conditions. Let us appoint one of our number to rule so that we can live under orderly government, rather than losing our homes altogether in the present chaos." So, even after all they suffered under the Assyrians, they decided it was a good idea to set up a monarchy and crown a king. And of course, who better to be their king than a man of the people that everybody wanted, Dioces. It wasn't easy convincing him though. He didn't want to have to deal with the village's constant problems anymore, but they begged him. Without him, it was anarchy, and the country was getting torn apart. He agreed if they were going to meet his conditions, which were as follows. He wanted a massive palace built just for him. He wanted bodyguards, a capital city that was going to be built from which he could rule, and in the center of the capital, he wanted his palace surrounded by walls and impossible to access by regular people. They granted him all of this, and he stated that these were going to be the terms of his ruling. He forbid anybody admission to his presence, and the only way to communicate a message to him was through a messenger. Nobody in the royal court could see him more than once a week, and they had to ask for permission beforehand. Dioces ended up ruling for 53 years, expanded the Median Empire, which paved the way for what was going to become the Persian Empire under his great-great-grandson Cyrus. And during his rule, the people's respect for him continued to grow until it became a sort of worship. They didn't see him as human anymore, and they began to believe he was the son of a god sent to rule over them. Dioces was an ambitious man, and at a young age knew that in a land of anarchy, the most powerful man is the one who can be trusted to be a fair judge. So that's the reputation he built for himself. But he learned the power of this law when he had too many clients, was too available, too noticeable, and didn't have the degree of respect he once had, although he was at the peak of his power. People began taking him for granted, so he retired for a while to allow the people to see what life was like without his judgment. And they ended up begging for him to return, and he did the same thing when he was made king. The historian Herodotus wrote that there was a risk that if they saw him habitually, it might lead to jealousy and resentment, and plots would follow. But if nobody saw him, the legend would grow that he was a being of a different order from mere men. How does this connect to Birdman and Lil Wayne? At one point, Lil Wayne was putting out more music than any other popular rapper, and it's how he built his reputation of the greatest rapper alive in the 2000s. He was releasing full-length mixtapes for free that were better than some rappers' fully produced albums, and delivering great albums as well. People began to see him as the premier rapper. If he was beating all of these other rappers in quality and quantity, it meant he was undoubtedly the best. But in the early years of this decade, people had begun talking about Lil Wayne falling off. He had become too accessible to everyone. He had fed them a little bit too much. And just like Diocese, people began taking his music for granted. And after the terrible album that was I Am Not a Human Being 2, performing awfully, both commercially, selling only 217K first week, which was bad for Wayne in 2013, and from the fans and critics thinking it was terrible, more talk was going around that Wayne was finished. This is when the Carter 5 started to get teased, and was slated to release at the end of 2014, which didn't happen. On December 4th, 2014, Lil Wayne tweeted, "To all my fans, I want you to know that my album won't and hasn't been released because Baby and Cash Money Records refused to release it." This was the beginning of a big feud and lawsuit between the father and son. People in Wayne's camp would continuously say that the Carter 5 was coming out soon, but it wasn't happening. And in 2015, Lil Wayne announced his $51 million lawsuit against Cash Money, saying that Birdman owes him money and violated terms of their contract by holding back the release of the Carter 5, and they were no longer speaking to each other. Lil Wayne would be yelling out F Cash Money on different shows, and in April of 2015, his tour bus got shot up in Atlanta by an associate of Young Thug, who at the time was also insulting Lil Wayne and trying to beef with him. But Wayne barely gave him a response. Wayne would diss Cash Money on his verse of A$AP Rocky's M's on his At Long Last A$AP album, and in June of 2015, he signed a streaming deal with Tidal to release his Free Weezy album, which didn't even count because this album was taken down. It wasn't available on other streaming platforms, and it wasn't the Carter 5. This process of insulting Cash Money continues for the next couple of years, with the hype for the Carter 5 reaching so high that some people thought it would never release. Me being one of those people, as I made a video back in 2017 with the title 5 Rap Albums or Mixtapes That'll Never Release. Similar to Diocese, the Carter 5 became a sort of myth. It wasn't going to release, and this made people want it even more. Adding to the fact it had been years since Lil Wayne had dropped an actual album, they missed Wayne and were hungry for more music from him. In September of 2016, Lil Wayne would get on Twitter and drop a tweet that had everyone thinking he retired. Similar to how Diocese had left his post. "I am now defenseless and mentally defeated, and I leave gracefully and thankful. I love my fans, but I'm done." And this triggered everyone into showing an overwhelming amount of support for Wayne. Damn near every single rapper you could think of sent support publicly, encouraging him not to quit, and the fans began to reminisce over all the great music that he had released over the years. Now that Lil Wayne had actually announced he may retire, they didn't want it to happen, when they had just recently been making jokes about him falling off. But thankfully, later on he would tweet, "I'm good, y'all. Don't trip." That same month, it was reported that Lil Wayne had the actual recording of the Carter 5, but didn't want to hand it over to Cash Money because he wanted leverage in the legal battle against Birdman. And this rumor would get validated in the summer of 2017, where Lil Wayne says he has the power to release the Carter 5 whenever he wants. He says, and I quote, "Of course, you're going to see the Carter 5. I just don't want to put it out the wrong way. Honestly, I can do what I want at any time. The fans deserve it to be right, and that's how it's going to be. I'm going to make sure it's right. I can drop whatever I want to drop. That's why I keep dropping whatever I want to drop. But I'm not going to give them the Carter 5 the wrong way." And dropping is likely referencing the two mixtapes, Sorry for the Wait 2 and No Ceilings 2, that he released back in 2015 along the Free Weezy album. But it had been 2 years without any music from Wayne. The people were hungry. In the beginning of 2018, Birdman says that the Carter 5 will be released before the end of the year, and in June 7th of 2018, Birdman and Wayne reach a settlement in which Lil Wayne gets paid $10 million. That summer, Birdman and Wayne reconcile after he apologizes, and with a Billboard article he said the Carter 5 was dropping really soon. And in a video he released on YouTube, Lil Wayne announced the Carter 5 will be released on his birthday, September 28th, only 3 days later. It would go on to sell 480,000 first week, with the second largest streaming week and his fourth number one album. The single Uproar with Swizz Beatz would peak at number 7 on the Hot 100, and the last song to chart this high or above, with Lil Wayne as the lead artist, was How to Love and She Will, both at number 5 and number 3 respectively back in 2011 when he released the Carter 4. Commercially, it was a huge success, and most critics considered it the best album since the Carter 3, and it was on the year-end top 50 best albums list of 2018 for every major online publication. One thing we learned from this is that Birdman might have not been lying for most of what he was accused of. He got a lot of hate when he said Lil Wayne can release the Carter 5 whenever he wants, but Lil Wayne would later admit that he was able to release it whenever he wanted. And when Baby said it was going to release before the end of 2018, he was right about that too. Likely unintentional, but Baby and Lil Wayne both used this law. Most likely intentional by Lil Wayne because he said he wanted the release for this to be right, and after he had finished his lawsuit, with the publicity higher than ever, doing a huge cover article afterwards on Billboard and announcing it would be released on his birthday, it was a calculated storm of publicity that just the name The Carter on any album brings. Even the biggest haters of Lil Wayne had missed him so much, even if they try to pretend they didn't, because they all streamed the project anyway. And if Lil Wayne had fallen off to them in 2011, there would be no need to check him out in 2018. But they did anyway. And the years that Lil Wayne was away from releasing an album had people just salivating at the mouth for this release from him, and it got the reception that it deserved. If Lil Wayne had just kept releasing every year like he used to, he might not have had such a big selling week and might have tired the listeners out. He was giving them too much at one point, that they became ungrateful. But when he pulled back and allowed them to hear the rap game without him, they realized what they took for granted. The reversal to this law is as follows. This law only applies once a certain level of power has been attained. The need to withdraw only comes after you have established your presence. Leave too early, and you do not increase your respect. You are simply forgotten. When you are first entering onto the world stage, create an image that is recognizable, reproducible, and is seen everywhere. Until that status is attained, absence is dangerous. Instead of fanning the flames, it will extinguish them. Remember, in the beginning, make yourself not scarce, but omnipresent. Only what is seen, appreciated, and loved will be missed in its absence. Leaving too early is a mistake that Ugly God made far too soon. He was just getting established in the rap game, but he up and ghosted for 2 years with just one feature on Lil Yachty's album, and the hype for him died so much because of that. He failed to create the image that was recognizable, reproducible, and seen everywhere for a long period of time. As a matter of fact, many other artists that came after him copied everything that he was doing, and they got a lot of publicity and grew a fan base doing it while he was gone. He only had that for a couple of months with his song Water, and in this fast-paced time, others like Lil Pump were ready to just hop on the wave, and they weren't going to slow down anytime soon. It seemed at certain times that Ugly God was a bit unsure and didn't even know if he wanted the fame or how he was going to be perceived. He didn't want to fully embrace being a meme, and he didn't know if he wanted to become an actual serious rapper and abandon the comedic part of what made his fans so attracted to him. So he fled the music scene, and for the betterment of his own well-being, which always precedes any monetary or fame-related goal. And when he came back, there wasn't an overwhelming amount of support. If another rapper who was omnipresent like 6ix9ine had disappeared and came back. This law cannot be used until you really establish yourself. People need to be seeing you everywhere. So much that they begin to think that they're tired of you or fed up, but not exactly reaching that point. And then you disappear and they start to wonder what happened. Where'd this person go? And their appreciation begins to grow and grow. This is what's happened with 6ix9ine. He was everywhere. Easily the most talked about rapper in the game, if not the most talked about music artist in general. And ever since he's been in jail, people are starting to miss how entertaining he consistently made the rap game with his personality and his music. So now, when he's released, there will be a huge stream of support for him, and many that were haters will still check out his stuff, even if they have something negative to say about it. Welcome to episode 17 of my series on the 48 Laws of Power. Today it's how Daylight never loses a rap battle. If you're somehow unfamiliar with Daylight, he's primarily a battle rapper, but became known to myself and many others who don't follow that scene from his DJ Vlad interviews where he's dressed as ridiculous characters or trolling damn near all of the time. If you like analysis videos on hip-hop and the music business, then subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Also, if you want to listen to the book for free, there's a link in the description. It also helps the channel out. Law 17 says, keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Humans are creatures of habit with an insatiable need to see familiarity in other people's actions. Your predictability gives them a sense of control. Turn the tables. Be deliberately unpredictable. Behavior that seems to have no consistency or purpose will keep them off balance, and they will wear themselves out trying to explain your moves. Taken to an extreme, this strategy can intimidate and terrorize. The lesson we're going to cover is the World Championship chess match between Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer. Boris Spassky was a Soviet chess grandmaster who was the world champion in 1969, and Bobby Fischer was an American who was a chess prodigy. At the age of 14, he became the U.S. chess champion, and at 15, he was the youngest grandmaster ever. In 1972, the World Championship of Chess was held in Reykjavik, Iceland, and keep in mind that Boris Spassky had already been world champion. The match was put on hold though because Fischer arrived late and voiced concerns about multiple different things ranging from prize money, how that money was going to be handed out, issues with holding it in Iceland. It had people thinking he was going to back out of the tournament. The Russians felt like Fischer was making a mockery of Spassky though, and the tournament, so they encouraged him to just step away, but he wouldn't. He wanted this game more than anything else because he knew that he would beat Fischer, and that was going to be the greatest win of his entire career. In games they had played with each other before, Fischer hadn't performed well against him. Spassky had this unique ability to read his opponent's strategy and use it against him. He was really patient and built his attacks that would end up defeating dozens of moves ahead. He had beat Fischer every time they played because he was able to see so much farther ahead and never lost control. This was the World Championship match, so things were different. But Fischer continuously threatened to quit, saying he didn't like the hall that the match was going to be held, complained about the lighting, complained about the chairs they were going to sit in. At this point, the Soviet Union threatened they would withdraw Spassky from the tournament, and this worked. After several weeks of negotiating and waiting, Fischer agreed to get the tournament started. It was a sigh of relief for all the fans. But on the day of the introductions to the tournament, Fischer would show up really late, and on the day of the match, he was very late again. If he showed up past the late time limit, he would forfeit the first game. People weren't sure if he was playing some mind game or he was actually scared of losing. This behavior was not normal for him. Fischer showed up exactly 1 minute before the match was canceled. The first game of a chess match is usually taken slow. Both players play cautiously and they try to get a feel for their opponent's strategy, but Fischer made arguably the worst move of his entire playing career in the early stages. And when he was on the defense, it looked like he gave up. which shocked Spassky because he studied Fischer, and he knew that he was never the kind to give up. Even when he was facing a checkmate, he would fight it until it was absolutely over. But this time, he looked defeated. But instantly, he made a bold move that shocked everyone in the room, including Spassky, but he was able to recover and take the victory for the first game. It was still a bizarre situation. Nobody knew if Fischer had intentionally threw the first game, was nervous, or some even thought he had lost his mind. Fischer, complaining once again about the room, cameras, and showing up late to the second game didn't help either. They were tired of it and gave him a forfeit this time, so he was down 0-2 now, which would be the equivalent of being down, let's say 0-3 in the NBA Finals. Nobody in a chess championship had ever come back from being down 2 games. In the third game, though, things changed. He had the eye of a predator with supreme confidence, and it bothered Spassky. He was down 2 games. He wasn't supposed to be confident. And once again, Fischer made a bad move early on like he did in the first game. But Spassky didn't capitalize on it because the cocky presence Fischer had him thinking that it was a trap. But he couldn't figure out what the trap exactly was. And before he knew it, he was checkmated and lost the third game. And Fischer jumped out of his seat, yelling at the Soviets, "I'm crushing him with brute force." Did I forget to mention that the Soviets had dominated the chess world championship for the preceding 24 years? The next games, Fischer was pulling moves that nobody had ever seen or expected from him before. They were not his playstyle at all, and Spassky hadn't anticipated this and started to make mistakes. After losing his 6th game, he started crying, and after the 8th game, Spassky believed that Fischer had been hypnotizing him, so he decided not to look him in the eye, but he lost anyway. After the 14th game, Spassky called a conference and said that there was an attempt being made to control his mind and questioned if the orange juice they drank at the chess table was drugged or chemicals were blown into the air, and even accused Fischer's team of putting something in the chairs that was messing with Spassky's mind. The KGB had to come in. Spassky was embarrassing their country, and they took this very seriously. They took apart the chairs and x-rayed them. They found nothing in there. There was nothing found anywhere except 2 dead flies and a light. Spassky started telling them he was having hallucinations and couldn't keep playing even though he tried. It was over, and Bobby Fischer won. Like I mentioned earlier, Spassky was built to beat Fischer, and already had won against him multiple times. But Fischer knew what made Spassky so good, and it was his ability to use someone's predictability against them. Everything he did leading up to and during the match was to mess with Spassky's mind. The ridiculously long wait likely fatigued him, and the uncertainty of whether or not the match was going to happen amped up the already existing anticipation. The most lethal were the purposeful mistakes that Fischer made, appearing to have no clear strategy that Spassky could pick apart and predict. Fischer was shaking up his own style, even if it meant losing the first game. Spassky's reputation was built on how calm and collected he was, but this was the first time in his entire career he had no idea what his opponent was doing, and he slowly lost his mind until he started to look like the crazy one that tournament. How does this relate to Daylight and his ability to win every battle as a battle rapper? Of course, he doesn't win every battle, and battle rap in general is not some sort of clear-cut winner like chess, and involves many different factors than just the words you're spitting, but your aura, confidence, crowd control, and ability to intimidate your opponent. But there's a reason why Daylight is not only respected for his craft in that community despite his antics, but he's also transcended the niche of battle rap into being known by many people who aren't even into that scene, such as myself. One lead-up and performance of a battle Daylight was in that we're going to talk about is his battle with 40 Bars on Queen of the Ring. Just like any other event or fight, they have to promote battles leading up to them, and this time it was during a DJ Vlad interview where they had Daylight and 40 Bars face-to-face answering questions and showing a lot of mutual respect for each other's craft. She was asked about whether or not she had anything in mind that Daylight was going to pull, and she said she knew he wouldn't come with just bars, and even admitted that he was a better performer. This is when Daylight starts to sow different seeds of what he would potentially do in their battle, one of which was dressing up as a girl to make it a fair battle, another being really in her face with bad breath, one being getting on his knees and rapping to her, and also giving her a kiss during the battle. He even told her the plan that he was going to use on her during the battle, which she was hesitant to believe at first. But he even let her know that the last time he told the interview what he was going to do during the battle, it was exactly what he did.
But
crucify him, but it'd be worse.
if I battle you and I'm dressed like a girl, then that's girl on girl.
No, it's gonna be man dressed like girl on grown ass woman. It's not gonna be that.
But I have to make it fair.
Clothes don't make it fair.
Yeah, dude.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Versus Philly Swain.
Yeah, I did.
What if I'm on you like that?
Norma Bates was on me like that. If you're
But
a
no,
lady and
like-
she's a lady, it makes no
like,
difference.
My lips was like rubbing the hair on his face.
That means nothing to me.
Are you gonna be scared?
No. What are you gonna do to me?
What am I breathing?
I'll just hold my breath.
For 3 minutes?
I can swim, so maybe about a minute and a half I can hold my
So
breath.
what happens the other three? The other minute?
I'm just gonna turn away and hope you get the
What
fuck
if
out
I
my face.
keep coming like wherever you turn. Like,
Yeah, so that shit doesn't bother me. Nothing that you do is gonna bother me. As long as you don't physically strike me.
I won't.
No, I don't think you would, but anything you would do is your proximity to me, all
So
that
what
shit
if I
doesn't
get on
matter.
my knees and rap to your
I don't know.
I gotta,
Might bust it open and watch you.
I gotta talk to this and just like get on my knees and just talk right to it. Like, first of all, you need.
Well, 40, it seems as though Daylight is willing to go the extra mile to play on the sexual aspect of the
Right.
battle.
What would you do if I'm rapping, talking to you, boom, 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 kiss you on the lips?
You're gonna have to beat me up. I'm gonna probably hit you.
What if and you can hit me and I just lay on the ground and cry?
It'd be a good world star moment for me. I'm gonna win too. As much as you won in this battle, I'm gonna
So
win.
if I do gimmicks, you're gonna participate in it?
Why not? I'm gonna win. I'm
That's
not
what I
stupid.
want.
That's where everybody else f***s up.
That's
I'm
what
not
I
gonna
want.
lay down and let your gimmick roll over me. I'm gonna incorporate that
So
shit
if
into
I
my
lay
performance
down
as
on
well.
the
So
ground-
we're both gonna be shiny.
Well, Daylight, do you feel at all like there's any pressure going up against a girl that if you do walk away with people saying you took the L?
This was really clever by Daylight because he was gauging her reaction to all of the different scenarios he mentioned in their interview. Of course, her response in words to each of them didn't give too much, but beyond that, you can see her body language and reaction and tone to each of the different possible scenarios. And this let him know which would be most effective to use against her, and also what wouldn't bother her at all, which would be a waste to even try. Not only that though, but this meant that 40 bars had a lot more to worry about now. Not only does she have to prepare her bars and come to the battle ready for that, but she also had to give a solid performance and worry about which stunt Daylight was going to pull from all the ones he mentioned already, and maybe one or two he didn't even say, which is a mental load she had to carry going on there. Meanwhile, all Daylight really had to do was prepare for the battle and choose what he's going to do. But there's nothing unexpected that's going to come from 40 Bar's side, which is less weight that Daylight had to carry when he's preparing for a battle. It's a ridiculously unfair advantage, and when it came down to the battle, what he ended up doing towards the end of the battle was pulling his meat out, which caused quite the reaction. And not only that, after the battle he was interviewed and he had exactly this to say.
Well, do you think that you doing that kind of a race what 40 did?
40 got her shit erased. There was not one post online that said anything about her. And she was looking very sexy that night and still got her shit erased. I erase people, man. That's what I do best. She got erased. It's not even the people, was 40 there? Did she show up? I don't think so. She didn't show up, no. Yeah. She didn't show up.
People's thoughts were fairly split, and many thought Daylight lost that battle 2-1. But he was able to turn the entire narrative into just talking about what he did, that nobody was even discussing 40 Bar's performance, which may have been intentional. He likely said that this was a split decision or very close because he pulled this move towards the end of the battle. But regardless, that's what everyone talked about after their battle. He won and silenced any talk about her. There was also another battle against Interstate Fats where Daylight dressed up as Jesus in a KKK outfit, and you can imagine how uncomfortable this made a white battle rapper who is probably feeling a ton of white guilt being in both a battle rap environment and having to attack someone dressed like that. It's psychological warfare with Daylight, not just a gimmick or rap battle. When asked about it in an interview, Daylight had this to say. I'm going to tell you the whole story of that, the honest story of that. So big ups to my boy UGK. He's like my right hand man, big Batmobile. Anywho, so he has a video online called Fly. This song is about him having a walk with Jesus or whatever, him and Jesus playing basketball and all types of stuff. So, I had to play Jesus in the footage or whatever. So we had the costume, which was the robes. We had the robe, we had the wig. We had all that stuff already. Just the whole Jesus costume. Boom. So, a couple of days before the battle, we're in the living room going over ideas, and the costume fell out the bag. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at the costume. He looks at me and is like, "You better not." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "Nigga, you better not think about it." And I'm like, "What you talking about, man?" Because he knows me to the level. All you do is make eye contact, and he knows what the hell I'm about to do. So he's like, "You better not. Don't even think about it." And I'm like, "What, man?" He's like, "I know what you're thinking." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You're going to wear the Jesus costume." I said, "You're damn right I am." When asked the reason why he decided to do so, I don't believe he really gave the entire true reason. But what he said was, so I went in there, I put it on, I said, "How would this look if I'm battling?" He was like, "I don't know, nigga. This kind of looked like disrespectful to Christians." I'm like, "Man, well, I got something." When he said it looked disrespectful, I said, "I got something even more bigger than that." He said, "What?" I said, "I'm about to go KKK on them on top of this." He said, "Nigga, what are you trying to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I just want people to hate me because hate goes very far." Boom, hate. I come up with the KKK hat. I cut a little pillowcase. I put the little birthday cone inside of it so it can stand up. Boom, now I got the KKK hat. I try it on, and then I say, okay, why am I wearing this? What would be the point of me wearing this? Boom, I got it now. I got it. If somebody asked me, why did you do that? My moral of this would be, in battle rap, is gun, gun, kill, kill, pow, pow, clap, clap, clap. In all actuality, it turns out to look like black on black crime. That's what it looks like in all actuality. Two black niggas in a ring talking about how they're going to shoot each other or kill each other. That's perfect, all right. So what I want to do is, I want this to look like white on white crime now. This is going to look like white on white crime. You have a white guy by the name of Fats who is saying how he's going to kill another Klan member. This is dope. This is looking very dope to me. We need some more white on white crime in this world. So yeah, let's have another white guy talk about how he's going to kill another Klan member. So that whole moral of the KKK outfit, it was deeper than just battle rap itself. And if there's one thing for certain when it comes to Daylight, it's his unpredictability. That sets him apart from anyone else in battle rap, or even rap as a whole. And today is Law 18. And looking back on how Kid Cudi nearly destroyed his career, and it was nobody's fault but his own. Kid Cudi has finally dropped Man on the Moon 3. It sold 148,000 first week, which is his second highest first week sales for an album since Man on the Moon 2 released in 2010. And this album released in an era where it's much harder to sell albums first week, so this is all the more impressive. Law 18 states, "Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. The world is dangerous and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from valuable information and makes you conspicuous and an easy target. Better to circulate among people, find allies, mingle. You are shielded from your enemies by the crowd." Shi Huangdi was the first emperor of China. He was crowned at the very young age of 13, but prior to that unification, the region known as China now had well over a dozen countries and provinces. He started off as the king of Qin and a warrior with very little mercy. He used both violence and finesse to conquer the provinces around his own Qin. At this point in time, the whole region of China was made up of many different provinces that were essentially their own country and culture. What Huang did was break up the feudal system, and in order to keep track of the over 100,000 members of the royal families of each of those provinces, he moved them to the capital of his now united China, with the most important of them in a palace. He brought together many of those walls on the borders into what is now known as the Great Wall of China. He had a standardized written language for everyone, as well as laws. During this process, though, he decided to outlaw the writings and teachings of Confucius that had basically become its own religion in Chinese culture and other provinces. But under his order, he had thousands of books related to Confucius or his teachings burned, and anyone who was spreading Confucius or quoted him was beheaded. This garnered him a lot of enemies within his kingdom, and he became more worried about his own safety. That would evolve into a paranoia. One writer of the time said that Qin has been victorious for 4 generations, yet has lived in constant terror and apprehension of destruction. Shi Huang lived in the most incredible palace of that time. It had 270 different pavilions that were all connected by secret underground passages that let the emperor move around the palace with nobody seeing him. He slept in a different room every night, and anybody who would look at him accidentally was beheaded. There was a very small circle of men close to him that knew where he would be, and if any of them shared that information, they would be killed too. This seclusion let his powers slowly slip from him. Eunuchs and ministers would put political policies into place without his approval or even notifying him, and they began to plot against him as well. He had become emperor just by the name and title, but with almost none of the influence. He still had the power, but barely enacted it because he was so isolated. Even when the emperor would leave the palace, he would move around in a disguise, so nobody knew it was him. On one of the trips, he just suddenly died, and his body was brought back to the palace in a disguise too. They packed his dead body in a cart filled with salted fish, so the stench of his dead body would be hidden, and nobody would find out about his death. He died away from all family and friends. It was only his minister and a few eunuchs that accompanied him. Nobody knows how he died, but there are speculations that he was poisoned by his ministers, those same people enacting policies and conspiring against him. His isolation made him weaker. He was in a fortress and he lost contact with all of his sources of power and people that would feed him information. He lost his ears to the problems and the thoughts of the people in the empire, as ironic as it is. Him isolating put him in more danger than it did safety. He was so far away from anyone, he couldn't even hear the plots against him. Kid Cudi had burst into the scene known for his message of being a loner. Mr. Solo Dolo, the lonely stoner. His first and most important relationships prior to that of Kanye West, who would bring him into the industry by signing him to Good Music, were with Emil Haney, Dot the Genius, Rat-a-Tat, and Plain Pat. Cudi's debut hit, Day and Night, was produced by Dot the Genius, but the fan favorite and debut album of Kid Cudi, after the great reception of his mixtape A Kid Named Cudi, was Man on the Moon. Man on the Moon had all the tracks produced by Emil, Plain Pat, Dot the Genius, Rat-a-Tat, or Kanye West. A track here and there were produced by other producers, but these names made up nearly the entire album. And Man on the Moon was a huge success, with the hit song Day and Night, as well as Pursuit of Happiness. The project sold 104,000 first week, charting behind Jay-Z's Blueprint 3 that he contributed to as well. Kid Cudi's follow-up release would be Man on the Moon 2, the sequel released in 2010, and once again the production on this album was littered with familiar names. Emil produced 9 tracks on this album, more than half, with production from Plain Pat and Dot the Genius on most of the other tracks. The crew put together this album, and it had the hit song Erase Me with Kanye West and improved sales of 169,000 first week. Kid Cudi would also make contributions to Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy that same year on Gorgeous and All of the Lights. But things began to change after this, Man on the Moon 2. Instead of continuing the series and likely having a successful Man on the Moon 3, Kid Cudi decided to say, the hell with that, and his next album released in 2012 would be the self-titled Wizard, the group he formed with producer and close friend Dot the Genius. He announced it in January of 2011 on Twitter. Pushing for a summer release of the Wizard album, I produce and play guitar on everything with my main man Dot the Genius. He's learning bass. The Maniac film will be released later this year. Cage, Shia, and I really want everything just right, and I need the proper time for scoring. The edit must be epic. Wizard is a rock album, no raps, just singing. Brand new thing, flavor. Dose of Dopeness, however, will be on the Wizard album as a bonus jam. About time, eh? I've been wearing the same jeans for months, and I feel good about that dedication. Working on some new J and Ye stuff. I'm gonna finish up some things, and then I'm gonna chop it up with y'all. Word. And officially going ham. Oh, I forgot the best news ever. New mixtape, A Man Named Scott. That's this summer, for all those who mess with my raps. This is for you, since I'm gonna be all rocked out with the Wizard stuff. Also, it's free. Yes. Man, I'm really happy to finally get all that good news out there. More to come, not even close. Oh, in New York, catch me if you can. I'll start filming How to Make It in March. Domingo Dean stuff. Legit. Spoiler alert, that A Man Named Scott mixtape never released. But this was a massive risk. Why would Cudi leave all the other producers and make a rock type album? This was also under his newly formed label imprint Wicked Awesome Records, under Good Music, and through Republic. An interesting note is where this album was recorded. At a listening session in LA, Dot the Genius said he wanted to record the album in the best studio possible, but Cudi strongly disagreed. Cudi believed that the album needed a raw and gritty feel, which led to recording on either the tour bus or Kid Cudi's home. This album had zero production from Emil or Plain Pat. It was all just Dot and Cudi. Sales had more than halved from Man on the Moon 2. Wizard only did 66,000 copies first week, which Cudi hopped on Twitter to show his frustration. Okay, so just a heads up. My weak label only shipped 55K physicals because they treated this like some indie side project tax write-off. So I apologize on behalf of my weak major label. And I apologize for the lack of promo again, my weak major label. They tried to rush me through this so I can just give them another Man on the Moon. But guess what? Screw that. Next album is Wizard. Man on the Moon 3 on hold till 2014. Who mad? Not me and Dot the Genius. So it's definitely going to be tough to find one in the stores, guys. I'm sorry about that. I gotta go out and find one too, because my weak label never even gave us a copy of our own album. Fail. I'm letting Universal Republic have it. Screw it. What they gonna do? Spank me? And Teleport to Me, Jamie ain't on the radio. Like, hello? Hit. This project wasn't received well by the fans either, even though it was number 1 on the iTunes charts. The reviews were very mixed since this sounded nothing like they were listening up to until that point. But Kid Cudi not only isolated himself in his own home while recording this and away from his other producers, he took it one step further, and when he announced his next album Indicud, he would have no production from anybody on there other than himself, with Hit Boy co-producing one track and Dot just doing drums on 2 tracks. In 2013 is where the friction began between Kid Cudi and Kanye West too. He first announced that he was leaving Good Music in April. On April 2nd, 2013, Cudi announced on Power 106 in Los Angeles that he was no longer under the Good umbrella. Man, everything is cool, Cudi said at the time. Everything is peace with everybody on the label. There's never been any issues, but I am announcing that I'm no longer on Good Music. And this is something that no one knows, really. I'm no longer on Good Music. Cudi went on to clarify that it was a tough decision because he viewed West as a big brother. Cudi said that as he broke the news that he wanted to go in his own direction, with Wicked Awesome Records, to West over the phone. West got it because he, too, wanted to head in his own direction. Cudi would release his 3rd solo album, Indicud, only 10 days later with a massive sales increase, since this was his own project, not under a separate name. It sold 139,000 copies first week, but there were many criticisms about it too. Many critics and fans said this didn't sound anything like Man on the Moon Kid Cudi, and of course it didn't. None of those producers were on Indicud. He distanced from all of them. And during this project, Kid Cudi was just learning how to produce. This was his last project under Good Music, and at this point, Cudi was further removed from the industry. He wasn't working with many other rappers or artists other than the core close people like King Chip, His original producers hadn't been seen in the past 2 projects, and he also voiced some frustrations at his appearance on Kanye West's Yeezus album on the track Guilt Trip in the beginning of 2014. As a matter of fact, 2014 was filled with Kid Cudi coming at his former close friends. The vocal that I did on that song was a couple of years old. I forgot which session it was, but it was just a reference, Cudi said. I discovered that I was on the song via Twitter. I saw kids hitting me up like, "Are you on Guilt Trip?" or saying, "Great job." And I'm like, what the hell is everyone talking about? So I go on Twitter, and then I hear the song, and I'm like, okay, I know the beat, I know the song. Then I'm like, oh man, okay. Part of me was flattered, like, it's kind of cool that he thought of me. Then I started thinking about it more. It was like, why not call me and have me come in there and give it? Why underuse me? Why put 4 bars of vocals to coax my fans into thinking this is a legitimate Kid Cudi feature on this song? And it isn't. This is an understandable frustration from Kid Cudi. He wasn't even notified of it. But his actions the rest of the year are what make the comments around this look worse than if this were just a standalone event. He released Satellite Flight on February 25th to sales of 87,000 first week, entirely produced by Kid Cudi and a couple with Dot the Genius, but still, no Plain Pat or Emil. It was marketed as the prelude to Man on the Moon 3 and received okay reviews. That same year, Cudi had criticized Lupe Fiasco for charging fans $500 for a personalized verse from him and publicly said on Twitter, "What are you doing with the money you're making from this, at Lupe Fiasco? Are you giving some of this money you're about to make to a charity, or," before later calling the idea a bit sketch. Fiasco then shot back with a series of tweets that read in part, "A custom verse is not to swindle you as my competitors would have you believe. It's to give you total control over what you want to hear." In 2015, Kid Cudi would also randomly go at Kendrick Lamar subliminally on Twitter saying, "Dear black artists, don't talk down to the black community like you're God's gift to niggas everywhere." This was in reference to a cover story that Kendrick Lamar did for Billboard, when Kendrick had just been featured on his Solo Dolo Part 2 song on Indicud and has been known for voicing support for Kid Cudi and his music. Lupe Fiasco doesn't have beef with many artists, almost none actually, but he has made it abundantly clear that if he runs into Kid Cudi, it is the only rapper, which he wants to happen, that he runs into him, and that it won't be a pretty sight. He said in multiple lives that Kid Cudi has done foul things to him and everyone who was close to him and wanted good things for his well-being, either a part of good music or just closely affiliated with good music like himself. Kid Cudi had also become known for liberally blocking people on social media that wondered, questioned, or told him to go back to his old style. He was not only building this fortress around him musically in real life, where his collaborations with producers, especially the ones who helped craft the sound that made him famous, was minimal, and other artists became almost zero. He was also building up a fortress away from his original fans. I'm not the type of person that will say celebrities or artists just need to sit there and get clowned, attacked, and hated on social media, but never block anyone, because that means they're hurt. Absolutely not. You should block people if they're bringing that type of energy to you. You blocking people is taking away their privilege to see and interact with your content. I'll be running my social media like Kim Jong-un. This a dictatorship. But Cudi wasn't really receiving that. He was receiving feedback and really constructive criticism from the fans, letting him know what they wanted in the product, and he refused to listen. This all culminated in the massive disaster that released on December 4th, 2015. Speedin' Bullet to Heaven was his second attempt at an alternative rock album after Wizard, and it was almost entirely self-produced, besides the co-production on the self-titled track with Plain Pat, but not a single feature on it, and it was a massive flop on every single imaginable level. It sold 19,000 copies first week. It was rated terrible by not only critics, but Kid Cudi fans too. A terrible moment. Kid Cudi must have still been suffering from delusions at that point, because he didn't address any of the feedback, just called them haters. 2016 would be a big roller coaster of a year for Kid Cudi though. He briefly came out of isolation for one of the most memorable moments in recent hip-hop history, and the first time the public saw him reunited with Kanye, and that was at the Madison Square Garden Yeezy event, where they played some songs off The Life of Pablo, one of which was Father Stretch My Hands, that Kid Cudi was featured on. This was a really happy moment. Travis Scott, Kid Cudi, Kanye West, and everyone from Good Music reunited and having a good time, but it wouldn't last very long. On March 25th, Kid Cudi released the first song to his next album titled The Frequency, and produced by Plain Pat and Mike Dean, two producers the fans hadn't seen on a Kid Cudi album in years. It was received well after the terrible performance of Speedin' Bullet to Heaven, but in an interview with Billboard in April of 2016, Kid Cudi said Man on the Moon 3 would never happen. Guys, you have to realize, I came up with Man on the Moon when I was a young man, he explained. People change their vibe. We can follow the same template and do the 5-act split. Sonically, I'm still going to be where I'm at. Honestly, I was ready to live up to the obligation and do Man on the Moon 3. I haven't been messing around. I was planning on doing it after Speedin' Bullet, but the Speedin' Bullet response tore me up. It made me realize what's most important. I'm getting back on the bike again and doing what I do best. Me. His alternative rock effort broke the rapper's top 10 streak of albums after it debuted at number 36 on the Billboard 200 charts. Speaking bluntly, Cutter said he has plenty of more music to offer fans to suppress their longing for the old Cudi. I don't even feel obligated to do Man on the Moon 3 anymore, he said. As of right now, people should just get that off their minds. That's not ever going to happen. It'd be different if the first two were platinum. They're not even platinum. Man on the Moon 1 is like 860,000 sold. It's hanging on by a thread. In September, Cudi decides to go on a rant attacking Kanye and Drake of all people. I need y'all to know I got so many haters within the industry, and these clowns know I'm about to crush their entire existence. Everyone thinks they're so great, talking top 5 and be having 30 people write songs for them. Let me tell you something. My tweets apply to who they apply. Ye, Drake, whoever. These niggas don't give a damn about me, and they ain't messing with me. Niggas keep you close when they see how powerful you are by yourself, when they see your greatness, out of fear. Anybody got an issue with my words, I'm glad. If you feel me, don't be scared to use your voice. I was for so long out of blind loyalty. From here, I'll let the music speak. As you were, peace and love to my supporters, and true ones, cut her out. This was bizarre because Cudi had performed progressively worse in his career the more he isolated himself and did everything on his own. He had built up these enemies in his head, just like the Emperor. There was a level of paranoia Kid Cudi had towards Drake, who not only offered to remix his Day and Night song way back in 2007, but also appeared in the Pursuit of Happiness music video, and never said anything ill towards Kid Cudi. Kanye West had just put him on his album earlier that year. So why was he doing this other than paranoia? During a show on the St. Pablo tour in September of 2016, Kanye would respond to Cudi on stage. Do you know how many people wish they could be signed to Good Music? West told the crowd. Get their life changed, have an opportunity. Never forget that. I'm so hurt. I feel so disrespected. Kid Cudi, we are two black men in a racist world. Don't ever mention my name in a bad manner. None of y'all. Kanye West would forgive Cudi only 6 days later on stage. The most important artist of the past 10 years, the most influential, and I hope he's doing well, West told the crowd between singing. I just want to take this time out to say Kid Cudi is my brother, the most influential artist of the past 10 years. It was soon after in October that Cudi had checked himself into rehab for suicidal urges. But once he was released, he was brought out by Kanye West on tour to perform Father Stretch My Hands. Kid Cudi's next album, Passion Pain Demon Slayin', released on December 16th. It didn't sell amazingly well. It did 50,000 first week, but the fans loved it. There was production from Mike Dean, Plain Pat, and Dot the Genius. There was no Emil back, but This was the Cudi that the fans had missed. He had 2 features from Andre 3000, Travis Scott, Pharrell, and even Willow Smith on there. He was finally collaborating with people again, and his career didn't look like it was doomed anymore. The next news of a Kid Cudi album was not just Kid Cudi, but a joint album between Kid Cudi and Kanye West. Me and Cudi album June 8th. It's called Kids See Ghost. That's the name of our group. This project was released in that June month of good music releases where Ye was released, Pusha T's Daytona, Tiana Taylor's album, and Kids See Ghost. This album was 7 tracks and incredible on all fronts. We got production from Plain Pat all over it, as well as all of Kanye West's producers. It would sell incredibly well at 142,000 units first week. Critics loved it, the fans loved it, but most importantly, I loved it. Flawless album and my favorite that year. Since then, both Man on the Moon 1 and 2 had gone platinum, and he was teasing his next album at the end of 2020 titled Intergalactic. But a big switch up happened when he did a song with Eminem in which he says the trilogy continues. And Man on the Moon 3 was released to massive success. Number 2 had it not been for Taylor Swift's surprise release, and on the album, it brings fans back to a similar feel. Production from the OGs, Emil, Plain Pat, and Dot the Genius, with a mix of sounds from Mike Dean and Anthony Kilhofer, but also incorporating newer producers with a fresh sound, mainly Take a Day Trip. Features were minimal, but above all else, this album should show Kid Cudi that isolation is dangerous. When he was alone, not only was his life going in a downward spiral, isolation drives depression, which Cudi has rapped about throughout his career, which then leads to drug abuse to cope with it, eventually leading him to have to go to rehab. But his career was falling apart, as was the quality of his music, according to his longtime fans. He breaks out of that fortress he built for himself, and he brought himself back to heights he hasn't experienced since the start of his career. A massively successful week of selling more than you did with your debut album first week, in a modern era where it's harder to do those similar numbers. An Adidas collaboration, shoe of your own, and love from both his fans and contemporaries. At this point, Kid Cudi is riding on an insane high, and I hope it continues for him. We're here to cover the 19th chapter of 48 Laws, and Law 19 reads, "Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. There are many different kinds of people in the world, and you can never assume that everyone will react to your strategies in the same way. Deceive or outmaneuver some people, and they will spend the rest of their lives seeking revenge. They are wolves in lamb's clothing. Choose your victims and opponents carefully. Then, never offend or deceive the wrong person." The story we're going to cover today is one of con artists, a dupe, a mark, target, or a sucker. It's the early 20th century, and a group of con artists decided to link up in Denver, Colorado. During the winter, they would go conquer the South, finessing, as some would call it. In 1920, the leader of this group, Joe Fury, was making hundreds of thousands of dollars in Texas with his con games. In Fort Worth, though, he met a potential mark by the name of J. Frank Norfleet, a country guy who had his own ranch with a lot of cattle. Norfleet had fell for the okie doke. He was tricked with the potential money he stood to make, emptied his bank account of $45,000, and handed it over to them. Several days later, they delivered his supposed millions of dollars, which was a couple of real bills that were wrapped around a ton of newspaper clippings. So similar to a lot of rappers flexing those stacks on Instagram and music videos. What usually happened after someone got played is they would hold their L and keep it pushing, since they were just so embarrassed of having fell for the con. Not Norfleet, though. He had different plans. He went to the police, who told him that there was nothing they could possibly do about it, but that didn't stop him. He was going to take this into his own hands. He said to the detectives, and I quote, "Then I'll go after these people myself. I'll get them too, if it takes the rest of my life." Vengeance was on his mind. He wasn't going to let them get one over on him. He had his wife take over their ranch and was off to the races. He would travel throughout the country looking for other people who had been conned, trying to get information from them, finding one who came forward and identified one of the members of the ring was in San Francisco. He found him and got him locked up, but instead of facing his term in prison, he decided to erase himself from this earthly existence. He wasn't done, though. He found another member of the ring in Montana, caught him on some Red Dead Redemption type activity with rope around him, and dragged him to the town jail. He even took a trip across the Atlantic Ocean to England, visited Canada, as well as Mexico, in search of Joe Fury and his right-hand man, W.B. Spencer. He found Spencer in Montreal, Canada, chasing him through the streets, but alas, he escaped. He later tracked him down and finally caught him in Salt Lake City, Utah. He turned himself in to the law. Now for the main man that conned him, Joe Fury. He found him in Jacksonville, Florida, and dragged him to face justice in Texas. But that wasn't enough. He needed the entire ring destroyed, spending an excessive amount of money, as well as another year of his life in hunting them down. But he successfully took every single one of them down and had them locked up behind bars. There were some that he didn't even catch, but they were so frightened by his relentlessness that they decided to just turn themselves in. After 5 long years of this, Norfleet took down the country's largest con artist ring. What did he have to show for it? Well, he was now bankrupt, ruined his marriage, but most importantly, he got his revenge, and he died a satiated man. Some people's insecurity and ego fragility cannot tolerate the slightest offense. To see if you're dealing with such a type, test them first. Make, say, a mild joke at their expense. A confident person will laugh. An overly insecure one will react as if personally insulted. Being fooled, conned, disrespected has activated their self-doubt, and they're desperate to repair the damage. Were the mortgage on Norfleet's ranch, the collapse of his marriage, and the years of borrowing money and living in cheap hotels worth his revenge over his embarrassment at being fleeced? To the Norfleets of the world, overcoming their embarrassment is worth any price. Academic's life really changed when he decided to venture out into the mainstream by going on Everyday Struggle. When you create content on YouTube, the people that are consistently watching you, they generally like you. They may disagree with your takes, make fun of you every now and then, but the experience overall is usually positive. Otherwise, they would just leave and not pay attention anymore. Mainstream is different, though. It's reaching an audience that have no idea who you are. But worse, it reaches people who hate you for whatever reason, especially if you're co-host on a show where a large amount of fans of the person that's also on your show is now somewhat forced to watch you. Academics has been vocal of what he had to do to make it in an industry that, as he says, didn't let him in, and he has made sure to exact revenge on anyone who has clowned him or tried to take him down when he was perceived to be in a state of weakness. There's no point in hashing out all the back and forths Academics has had with artists or other people within his industry. That would take us quite a while. But it is important to make note of the times he was disrespected, or even in the most recent example that we will get to later, perceives something as disrespect. Cue in none other than Chrissy Teigen, wife of John Legend and at the time on the all-star team of Twitter Fingers. She had clowned 6ix9ine and Academics in one of those photos during a music video shoot, I believe that was in the Dominican Republic, and insinuated that they were gay. She wasn't the first to make that same joke. A ton of accounts on the internet were making that joke. But she saw it could gain her some clout, so she hopped on the bandwagon, as per usual for her during that time. Many people would have likely ignored it, perhaps been bothered by it for a day or so, and moved on, but Academics, coming from a Jamaican background, was upset by this. Justifiably so. But he said nothing, for quite a while at least. Like Norfleet, he bided his time until he could strike at her. What better way than when John Legend's album flopped? And that's where we got this infamous clip.
Yo, one time she sneaked this to me, so f that hoe. Straight up. And John Legend could hear that. Don't have your bitch or any other bitch. How about you take that fucking big ass mouth of yours and that fucking weird ass looking face and start promoting your man's album? Maybe you want to do 25,000 first week. Because you got all the jokes, and when you're trying to get at niggas, you think you're the smartest, cutest, funniest thing possible. But your man is still fucking flopping. He's a legend doing 25,000. That's a flop. Chrissy Teigen suck a dick. Straight up. I got the biggest platform and I owe you bum ass niggas. I'm gonna drive it home day after day, day after day, day after day, day day after my whole liquor just spilled. My whole liquor just spilled right quick. My whole liquor just spilled. My whole liquor just spilled right. I don't know what happened.
Safe to say, what Chrissy Teigen thought was an innocent joke on her part was not interpreted the same way on the receiving end. He would leave her alone after this, but the next couple of people were not afforded this mercy. Let's take it to Nav. The brown boy from EXO decided to, out of the blue on New Year's Eve of 2019, the turn of the decade, send out a tweet at Academics, which is still up, saying the following: Academics hop on and off dick so much, he probably got STDs.
Who the talks about Nav? Who? You got watched on your main single. You got watched by Meek. You like every other rapper. You just trying to get the conversation about yourself. We're not talking about you right now, Nav. Get a record. Don't ride Uzi coattail to another collab. Where's your record?
On that same night, and New Year's Day, Academics went on a live stream and full onslaught against Nav and his career. This led to Academics clowning Nav at any point in time that he could for the next 14 months straight. Every song release, every article, every time. One stream was not enough, and he would also craft several narratives that did not make Nav appear too great when it comes to public perception, which is one of the most important things for any artist. Yet, Nav was still able to do some numbers on his album. Some say this didn't harm Nav at all, but if it didn't, there wouldn't have been a need or consideration by Nav to link up with Academics and issue an apology.
Honest to God, the source is it's me. I started it. I'm man enough to say that. Knew it instantly, like as soon as like went out. I'm like, yo, I'm tripping.
Publicly on his live stream, after being reported in a negative light for over a year straight. Then there's the longest standing beef Academics has had, one he had rarely entertained publicly until the past 2 years or so, and that's with College Kid. College Kid was a blog started in the early 2010s that was covering everything that was going on in the Chicago drill movement. They had started before but existed alongside Academics' war in Chirac, which quickly eclipsed them in popularity. This seemed to bother them because they would continuously attack Academics behind the scenes and in public. One of the things they did was buying the domain name djacademics.com. The regular academics.com had long since been taken by the once popular clothing brand. Several months ago, one of the two brothers that co-founded the blog together passed away from complications due to the virus. The last of his tweets having been spreading slander about Academics. But he'll explain it better than I can.
Y'all try to start a campaign. Y'all try to hit up Spotify. Y'all see Spotify? You started rocking with Joe Rogan? You think they was about to listen to College Kid, my nigga? If you think you mad at Academics with Spotify, give me a month. You're going to be madder. Actually, well, give me a week. You're going to be madder. And then give me a month. You might just kill yourself. Don't do it, though. Anyway, love Spotify. Here's the point I was trying to make. If somebody attacked the way you made an income, attacked everything about you, they try to buy your domain name, that's your name. They didn't want you to exist. They try to spread lies about you. They were attacking your integrity and your brand. If they fell to unfortunate circumstances, you would not say or you would not feel any empathy. This is what these guys did to me for years. For years. Why were they mad at me? All because people, they covered Chicago before me, but everybody preferred me.
Ack would go on a tirade against the dead brother and the living one in clips during his stream after he had previously tried to hold his tongue.
One of these guys is in the dirt. That's a fact. Ray Sean Autry, half of the College Kid brothers, he died. He died after overdosing on hate. That's it. I'm sorry to say. I got to be honest with y'all. He ain't died of COVID. The nigga, instead of going to doctor's appointment, instead of focusing on his health, instead of focusing on family, instead of focusing on anything good, his last moments in life was sending out tweets hating on Academics. I'm sorry to tell y'all that. The last 5 breaths he took, I was on his mind is very unfortunate. I got to keep it 100 with y'all because nobody want to talk about it. Go look at his tweets. His last tweet, it say, "F you, Ack." It's like the Grim Reaper is like knocking on his door and he's like, "Nah, hold up. Let me get this off. F you, Ack." And the Grim Reaper just kick that shit down and say, "Come on, man, you going with us." The last thing, his legacy, the legacy of College Kid is nothing but a bunch of losers trying to hate on academics. But here's the thing, though. The other buffoon got out of the hospital. And rather than take heed, you know what he's back to doing? Hating on Ack. Let me pull this up for you. I couldn't believe it. I believe it, chat. I really couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, chat. I just couldn't believe it. Your brother's in the fucking dirt. He just overdosed on hate. And you know what this thing is doing? The same fucking thing. Let me read you this fucking tweet. Let me read you this fucking tweet, chat. Look at it right here. Look. He responded to somebody. This is him right here. January 27th. Nah, my bro transitioned. Bro, he ain't transitioned. He died. He dead. He ain't transitioned. He dead. If he transitioned to hater heaven. He's dead. Stop putting that shit with, oh, he transitioned. Oh my God. He's in another form. No, nigga. He's in the academics hater heaven. There's a lot of people in there. Yo, Chad, name a few niggas who's in the academics hater heaven. It's a lot of niggas in there that was hating from the get-go. Talking about he transitioned. Transition to what? Transition to a spirit hater. Anyway, my bro transitioned a legend. I ain't gonna lie, his bro was a legend. A legendary Now, again, listen what he's saying. Y'all lost the battle. Y'all lost the war. Y'all lost everything. Why are y'all still going at Ack?
Which demonstrates something that is a consistency in academics' logic. He only really has a problem with people that are famous, celebrities, artists, or the like that could actually harm him or prevent him from doing something, disrespecting him, or making fun of him. He ignored College Kid for 8 years. It wasn't until they tried to get his Spotify deal taken down over accusing him of a very foul label to have, arguably one of, if not the worst labels to have as a man, because of a fake Bad Baby tweet that he never even sent out. After that, gloves were off, and they still continue to catch strays to this day. If there was ever revenge that academics decided to go above and beyond on a personal level to get extra credit and to destroy, it would be Rory and Mal. They were the first ones to diss him multiple times while they were on the Joe Budden podcast. One such event relating to how they felt he covered XXXTentacion.
I'll be honest with you, I was a little disgusted at some of the media outlets and people that were saying rest in peace, and to the people that think I'm talking about academics, I am, but not just him. Don't do your coverage to instigate the and then say rest in peace when it finishes. It's offensive. Yeah. It's gross. It's an awful process. People die over it because of people in their basements setting a standard for popularity.
Right. These certain dudes that they are giving these platforms to, they're bozos. Like, academics is a bozo. He should not have a platform like he has, because when real life happens, he shows just how much of a bozo he is.
Just like Norfleet, academics didn't need to come back at them right away. He bided his time, watched them from afar, until he decided to attack. He would clown the amount that they were paid in relation to Joe Budden and what the podcast was estimated to be making, make fun of the fact that they never built anything of their own, and talk about ownership to other people and podcasters when they themselves didn't own a lick of anything, and then laugh at and expose the reason for Rory's engagement falling apart. This was taken to a new level when they were fired from the Joe Budden podcast, and at the time left with nothing, while Joe was still pulling in similar numbers without them. It was during this period of time that Rory allegedly delivered a letter to Academic's home and said on Twitter that he knew where he lived. This was a boundary and level of disrespect Academics wouldn't tolerate, and he took it beyond personal. Justifiably so.
Ended that nigga. I'm not here to bully him. Listen, he been getting beat up by his girl. I think she ran off with a wedding ring. It's over. Flawless victory. Hats off. Chat niggas win. That bum will never mention my name again. And that's how I'm going to treat all these niggas, bro. That's the only way. Because if you sit here, I was sitting here mad cool, and everybody started to think, let's just bully academics. That's how we get it. Everybody was like, let's bully Ac. That's what they were doing. So you know what I said? All right, I'm about to just catch a couple of y'all and just make a mean example out of y'all. Okay?
He even says that he needed to make an example out of them so people would know that they couldn't get one over on him. Just like Norfleet needed people to know that he was not going to get conned without retribution. Academics claims to have ruined Rory's engagement by exposing the information of him having a side girl, who he also exposed as having been invited to Ac's crib and getting down with a member of the team.
Rory's girl was getting piped out in my pool. No kizzy. No cap. I don't got no reason to lie. It was going on 4 HD. I got the world's best cameras in mansion.
Academics has since then made Rory and Maul the butt of every joke, consistently makes sure they know his podcast is far outranking theirs, and just like he predicted, Rory hasn't uttered a word about him since then. He's at the top of the media game currently, a feat that wasn't easy, and not without sacrifice in terms of health, be it regular alcohol consumption and weight gain, or forgoing enjoying a social life for years while building his brand, all to never be disrespected again. And he makes that known to none other than Coi Leray and other rappers who he perceives to be disrespecting him by denying his podcast, as well as correcting his report on her first week album sales.
You see all these artists, they're starting to get a little humble. It's humble fever coming on. Big Act got y'all sales. The sales looking weak. Your sales looking weak. You was acting like you wasn't trying to do press. You was acting like you was bigger than the program. None of y'all bigger than Big Act. It's a fact. Feel me? 11K. Holy. Holy. I could add up all the sales for 11K. I think I made that this month. If an artist ain't down with my program, nigga, f you. And I'm gonna keep it like that. You heard me? I'm cooling out. People be like, yo, Act, you vindictive. Nigga, I built this shit by my damn self. If an artist don't rock with me, I crush him. That's how I deal with him. I don't give a fuck. If you because if you ain't do my podcast and you flop, I'm roasting you to hell. This is a stick up. I'm certified in this. If y'all niggas don't do my podcast and you flop, I'm roasting you, nigga. Facts. Get down. That's you better be with it if you don't do my. And don't be like, yo, Act, why you like that? You know I'm like that, nigga? Because nobody gave me no fucking chance in this industry. So now when I got the leg up, I shit on y'all niggas willingly, lovely. I couldn't wait to report that fucking 11K, nigga, or 9K. I couldn't wait. You know why? You just try to front on me. Anybody front on me, rest in piss.
Norfleet's claim was that he didn't want anyone to be conned by this ring again, and Academic's claim for his crusade is to bring justice and fairness to the new media being disrespected by the old media conglomerates and the industry as a whole. The law claims, though, that these individuals rationalize their immoderate insecurity and the self-doubt they experience from being duped or disrespected by a righteous cause for revenge. Is that the case? We don't truly know what they think or feel. But if there's one thing that you definitely don't want, it's to be in the middle of either of their crosshairs. Imagine you're a record label in late 2019 and see there's an unsigned, independent artist who's smashing streaming records and his song is outstreaming some of the biggest stars on your roster daily. You want him to sign to you. This isn't even a matter of seeing the potential of the song or the artist. The success is staring at you in the face. You listen to his catalog and he's got multiple songs you see could be hits with the right push. You could turn him into a star. After all, you had just turned another artist that same year into what some would say a superstar. He needs to be on your label. Law 19 states, know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. There are many different kinds of people in the world, and you can never assume that everyone will react to your strategies in the same way. choose your victims and opponents carefully. Then, never offend or deceive the wrong person. It's 1920 and it's a rough year for art dealers in America. Their biggest clients, who were the robber barons of the 19th century, had Ryuk knocking on their door. And there weren't new millionaires to fill up the spots that they were leaving behind. It had gotten to a point where art dealers decided to come together and pool their resources, which was not happening when business was booming. One of these was Joseph Duveen. He was an art dealer to the richest of the rich in America, and he was struggling more than the other dealers that year. So he decided to align himself with their team. Duveen was known for studying his potential clients for extended periods of time, making sure he understood their weaknesses, even the minute details of the different tastes they had in art, before he even met them. The crew now had 5 of the biggest art dealers in America. Now, to find a new client, they figured their whale, their Moby Dick, was going to be none other than Henry Ford, the richest man in America at the time. Henry Ford had not yet ventured into the art world, so it seemed like a logical plan for them to team up to get him as a client. The art dealers wanted to come prepared. They put together a list they called the 100 greatest paintings in the world. Coincidentally, they had every single one of the 100 available for sale and would offer them to Ford. With just one easy but expensive purchase, he could become the world's top art collector. The group toiled for several weeks to put together their presentation, a 3-volume set of books that had all of the reproductions of each painting alongside long text with each picture giving the history, significance, and more information on each art piece. Next stop was Ford's home in Dearborn, Michigan. How would you imagine the home of the richest man in America at that time? Probably nothing but luxury. Yet, when they walked in, they were met with a surprise. It was rather plain and simple. They were stunned. He welcomed them into his study and was flipping through the book with great pleasure. They were salivating at the millions they stood to make on this deal. Ford eventually set the book down and said to them, "Gentlemen, beautiful books like these, with beautiful colored pictures like these, must cost an awful lot." "But Mr. Ford," replied Duveen, "we don't expect you to buy these books. We got them up especially for you, to show you the pictures. These books are a present to you." Ford was perplexed. "Gentlemen, it's extremely nice of you, but I really don't see how I can accept a beautiful, expensive present like this from strangers." Duveen told Ford that the images in the book were recreations of paintings they were interested in selling him. Ford finally got what was going on and said, "But gentlemen, what would I want with the original pictures when the ones right here in these books are so beautiful?" Remember how I said Duveen was known for studying his marks? Well, he didn't bother to study Henry Ford this time. What? What the fuck? He was desperate, and he needed the money. Henry Ford was filthy rich, but he was still just a simple man, a plain guy, who isn't worth preparing all of these presentations because he doesn't care. This was out of the norm from all the experiences these art dealers had to deal with. This reminded me of an event that happened in 2019, one of the biggest songs that year, that would turn out to be one of the biggest songs of 2020. And the biggest record deal signed that year, 2019, for a whopping $8 million to none other than Columbia Records, home to some of the newest young stars in rap and some would say pop: Polo G, Lil TJ, Lil Nas X, The Kid Laroi, and Baby Keem. But there was one rapper who had an organic hit song before almost all of these, and before he signed, none other than Arizona Zervas. You've probably heard his song Roxanne before. It went ultra viral on TikTok and then throughout the internet. He had initially just posted a video of him, which you could say was dancing or just vibing out to the song, and it would become a frequently used sound on TikTok. The song was released on October 10th, 2019, independently distributed, and within 3 weeks would get to number 1 on Spotify's top 50 songs in the US, as well as topping several iTunes charts. It was the first song in years released by an independent artist to top those charts, considering it is outstreaming major label artists that are being pushed through many other avenues. It reached number 1 on the New Zealand charts, debuted at number 34 on the Hot 100 and number 24 on the UK charts. I can't say how rare and incredible this is for a song to do for an unsigned artist, and we haven't seen this happen since. And the hype was only growing. Labels were ringing him up, salivating to be able to sign him and get a hold of this song, as well as his catalog. He had released over 30 singles, usually weekly or bi-weekly, since 2016, and had gone viral early on for a Super Bowl freestyle he had done years back on Facebook. He was still a small rapper though, and just had his own buzz and fan base on the internet prior to Roxanne's takeoff. The track is now 5 times platinum in the United States and has many other platinum and gold certifications from countries like the UK, Canada, Australia, and more, with over 1.2 billion streams on Spotify today. The leverage that Arizona Zervas has was unlike what any rappers ever get. There was a bidding war going on to get him to sign, and eventually he went with Columbia Records for what was rumored to be an $8 million deal for just one single album. Coi Leray was another individual who signed that year to Republic, and in an interview with Vlad TV claimed she had signed the biggest deal that year, which is hard to believe considering the fact that she didn't have a single hit, much of a fan base at all, for her to command equal to or more than 8 million. Arizona Zervas was signed sometime between when the song took off and when it was announced on November 15th, 2019, that he signed to Columbia. A huge advance. Perfect. Now it was time to start pushing Arizona Zervas. Or was it?
Huh?
The upcoming months, the song continued to perform well, peaking at number 4 on the Hot 100 and staying top 10 on the charts for weeks upon weeks. Fast forward to today, and Arizona Zervas has never had another song chart on the Hot 100, has done only one interview ever that was over a Zoom call, and it was barely an interview, has not collaborated with any other artists on his record label or outside of his record label for any releases, and has still yet to release his debut album. 2.5 years later, 2 recent music videos have been released, My Time accumulating a mere 274,000 views in a month, and Bands accumulating 134,000 views in 2 months. He's had other songs that streamed well, for example, FML with 257 million streams on Spotify, and then Knight Rider following with 60 million streams on Spotify. Some people may say, well, Arizona Zervas was unable to go on tour due to the timing of the pandemic. 2020 and 2021, there's really no touring whatsoever. That stopped him from performing the song, likely as an opener for a bigger pop star or rapper and building a fan base from there. That is a fair take to make.
However,
it doesn't explain the lack of press he did, the lack of musical collaborations he released, or any of that. He did one single interview. The music video for Roxanne didn't release until 4 months after the song took off. He still hasn't gone on tour, and he's even had label mates such as 24K Golden and Polo G who were able to stay scorching hot and build up their fan base during the pandemic through TikTok for 24K Golden, as well as Polo G, and spreading their music, being active. Arizona Zervas really just didn't try. Or did he perhaps just not care? When record labels look to sign someone, they usually know exactly how to run them through the same process. After all, they've had thousands of artists come through those doors and have signed a countless number of artists throughout the decades. They make them feel special, tell them they love their music, mention how many other stars they currently have on their roster, what big stars and legends they can get them to work with right now, as well as what legacy acts have been signed to that same record label, and how they're going to turn you into a star just like them. The money is rarely mentioned until contracts start to get written up, and most artists are usually sold before the paper is even presented to them. But Arizona Zervas was a unique case since there was both a bidding war and he had the leverage of a hit song on the top 40 of the Hot 100. Can't state how much of a leverage point that is. Most artists can't wait to be superstars. Having fans chanting their name, being recognized in public, on Coachella, at these award shows, it's their dream. And Arizona Zervas had the opportunity to make that dream come true. Yet he opted out of that, released music infrequently, bought a $4.5 million house in the Hollywood Hills, and just, well, chilled. Arizona Zervis hasn't complained about any record label issues like most other rappers or artists who are nowhere near as hot as they once were. He didn't say Columbia failed to uphold whatever promises they made him. He just does his own thing, low key. And just like Joseph Duvine's failure to study Henry Ford, Columbia might have failed to understand what type of individual we can deduce Arizona Zervis to be. We don't know what their conversations were, but we can come to the conclusion that Arizona Zervis was happy getting a sum of money that would be life-changing, forever, and continuing to make music, lay low, and stay out of the celebrity lifestyle. A simple man, just doing what he enjoys regularly, much like Henry Ford. The Weeknd and Drake have a very complicated relationship, but it all started from when The Weeknd was just a fresh, faceless, but talented artist, and also a dash of cleverness. Welcome to episode 20 of our series comparing a story from the book 48 Laws of Power to a story in music. Law 20 reads, "It is the fool who always rushes to take sides. Do not commit to any side or cause but yourself. By maintaining your independence, you become the master of others, playing people against one another, making them pursue you." In particular, regarding The Weeknd, if you allow people to feel they possess you to any degree, you lose all power over them. By not committing your affections, they'll only try harder to win you over. Stay aloof and you gain the power that comes from their attention and frustrated desire. Play the Virgin Queen, give them hope, but never satisfaction. A historical example of the Virgin Queen relates to their history perfectly. It's 1558 in England, and Queen Elizabeth I is missing one important piece of the puzzle: a husband. They wanted her married as soon as possible, but there was plenty of debate regarding who she should marry, and as soon as possible would slowly turn into years. This wasn't for a lack of options. Clearly, the highest of nobility were courting her hand in marriage, and while she didn't outright reject them, she was nonchalant and gave off the vibe that she was in no rush. Even rulers of other countries throughout Europe were interested in marrying her: the King of Spain, the Prince of Sweden, and the Archduke of Austria, because they knew this would guarantee their country a strong alliance with England. If you mapped out what she said she was looking for in a husband over a period of time, you would realize that she was constantly contradicting herself. And this was intentional. She never argued and said she didn't want to get married, but she was playing a game. And the Virgin Queen would become almost a mythical figure for all the men that wanted their chance with her. There was a small diplomatic issue though, which was the revolt of the Flemish and Dutch lowlands, which were in possession of Spain, with which England had an alliance, so it was either choose France or Spain. By 1570, France seemed to be the best course of action, and she would allow herself to be courted by two brothers of the French king, Duke Anjou and Alençon. She strung both of them along. Anjou was closer though. He would kiss Elizabeth in public, refer to her by pet names, and she seemingly responded well. But while this was all going on, she signed a treaty of peace between France and England. By 1582, she would break off the courtship, and gladly so, because she found him repulsive on every measure. But for her country, she allowed him to pursue. At this point, she was too old to have children, so she was able to live the rest of her life as she pleased. Elizabeth learned that she had to play the field from her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. The people wanted Mary to marry someone, but it was impossible to please the people. If she married a foreigner, it wouldn't make them happy. Marrying a particular noble house would create rivalries. So what did she end up doing? She married Lord Darnley, a Catholic, which opened her up to turmoil with Scotland's Protestants. Elizabeth knew that marrying meant commitment to a party or nation that would pull her and her country into conflicts and potentially wars that she did not want any involvement in. And with the husband becoming the actual ruler, they would usually try to get rid of the queen in the same fashion that happened to Mary. Elizabeth's main goals were avoid getting married and avoid war, which she did. Not by telling people she didn't want to get married, that would be ridiculous, but by using the potential of marriage to create strong alliances for her nation. The Weeknd would employ the same tactics as Queen Elizabeth did, albeit in a different manner and time. Drake and The Weeknd are both from Toronto, and while Drake wasn't directly the first person to show him love, it was Drake's brand, October's very own, and Drake's manager and right-hand man, Oliver El-Khatib, who would post 2 Weeknd songs in December of 2010 on their blog titled Introducing The Weeknd. Drake would then officially co-sign him on Twitter on March 6, 2011, with a tweet quoting, "Bring Your Love, Baby I Could Bring My Shame," with a link that would bring you to another blog post that had a photo of The Weeknd with a link to download the song Wicked Game, and it read, "OVO Gang, Faded Too Long, theweeknd.com." Keep in mind, all of this is before The Weeknd's first mixtape, House of Balloons. They may have already been working together at this point because fans in the comments were excited for the up-and-coming release of Take Care, an album that was largely a collaboration between Drake and The Weeknd. Drake would appear as a feature on The Weeknd's second mixtape, Thursday, on the song The Zone. Drake would also have The Weeknd perform at OVO Fest that July. These were already 4 big looks that Drake was giving The Weeknd. At this point, every record label was reaching out to The Weeknd. But instead of signing a record deal, he remained with Drake, playing the field. A record deal isn't far from a marriage, business-wise. He would be married to that company or record label, and if it was Drake's OVO label, other label offers would cease to exist. And if he decided to marry and sign to another record label during this time, Drake would pull back his support. Leading up to the release of Take Care, Drake would tweet out OVO Take Care, Echoes of Silence on October 22nd, 2011. OVO would become a recurring theme. Echoes of Silence was the highly anticipated third project by The Weeknd that would release in December, and Take Care would release in November. But, leading up to it, Drake would be interviewed and say the following about The Weeknd's involvement in Take Care. "He's like a writer, collaborator on 4 songs on my album, which I'm very proud of," Drizzy told MTV News. "I usually like to write all my own stuff, but we get it. We try to tap into the same emotions because we're from the same city." When asked about their business relationship, not much was offered up. "He's not signed right now. He's still in the city. He hasn't left. He's never been on a plane before. I don't think he's ever left the city. He's a real Toronto kid that's just one of the most talented people I've ever come across." After being pushed a bit more on if there are any benefits, Drake replied, "It's really nothing more than I support him. Oliver, who's my manager, also along with Cortez and G, brought him to me and we're just involved in his career, man." Take Care would release on November 15, 2011, with The Weeknd featured on the song Crew Love. This album eventually becoming a classic album and winning a Grammy for Best Rap Album. The Weeknd's stock is sky high, rolling into 2012, and 6 months later, he still isn't signed to anyone. As far as on paper, it's all being worked out, but that's not really what counts anyway. What counts to me is the fact that the affiliation is known, and that's all I really care about. Drake would say in an interview with Sway during a tour stop in Houston on his Club Paradise tour, "Much like Queen Elizabeth's virginity would become a mystery that would only grow her popularity, so too did the mystery of where The Weeknd's allegiance lied. I want to continue being involved in his career and vice versa, and keep making music together, because you take songs like Crew Love and The Zone. That's what people wait all night to hear." But that wasn't on The Weeknd's mind, because on September 11th, 2012, it was announced that The Weeknd signed a partnership with one of the biggest record labels, Republic Records, with his own imprint, XO, and was set to release his project Trilogy, which was a compilation of House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence that November. Drake didn't take too kindly to that, tweeting out, "You won't get away with just a thank you. You owe me a favor." The Weeknd had played the field and got the best deal possible. He would own his masters, got co-signed and pushed by one of the biggest rappers in the game at that point, and built up his own massive fan base in the process, all by not committing to anyone but himself, XO. When asked about it in a 2013 Complex cover story in the lead up to the album release for Kissland, The Weeknd said, "The thing about Drake is, I told him what my decisions were going to be, and he was down with it from the beginning. I told him from day one what my decision was going to be," he continued. "I wasn't going that route. I was going to go my own route, and he supported me," which may make sense because it was OVO. It was never just OVO, but perhaps Drake thought that they were going to have a deal. He would also say, "I was hungry. I was like, dude, take anything. I gave up almost half of my album. It's hard. I'll always be thankful. If it wasn't for the light he shined on me, who knows where I'd be. And everything happens for a reason. That said, you never know what I would say if this success wasn't in front of me now." The Weeknd didn't make the mistake of signing to Drake. Perhaps he saw the experience of what it was like giving away half of his own album to feed someone else's career, and recognized the conflict that would arise from that in the future. After all, another incredibly talented example we can look at is Party Next Door, who has on multiple occasions voiced his own frustration with lack of commercial success, attributing it to his label situation. despite having written one of the biggest hits of the past decade, one of them being Rihanna's work. However, following this too closely can have its drawbacks, and the reversal reads, if you keep your growing number of suitors waiting too long, you'll inspire, not desire, but distrust. People will start to lose interest. Eventually, you may find it worthwhile to commit to one side, if only for appearance's sake, to prove you're capable of attachment. Queen Elizabeth made it seem like there was a winner of the race at one point, albeit not marrying him. If she had not done that, people would have eventually recognized that she had no intention of ever getting married. The Weeknd signed with Republic after getting an incredible deal. Had he kept pushing things longer, more months, or even another year, Drake and others would likely recognize that he was just playing around and wasn't interested in closing a deal with any of them, leading to Drake pulling back his support. It's a delicate balance. What do Aiden Ross and the biggest jewelry conman of the 19th century have in common? Welcome to episode 21 of our series on the 48 Laws of Power, where we connect a historical story from each chapter to an event in the modern day that happened either in music or some other industry that's popular. Law 21 reads, play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person. The trick then is to make your victims feel smart, and not just smart, but smarter than you are. Once convinced of this, they'll never suspect you may have ulterior motives. Almost nobody considers Aiden Ross as brilliant as he actually is, which strongly worked to his advantage throughout his live streaming career, in particular collaborations. But first, a historical example of some other fake fools. It's 1872, and two men named Philip Arnold and John Slack had just discovered a diamond mine in Wyoming. They were able to get the message to U.S. financier Asbury Harpending, who was in London at the time. The message came from William Ralston, who was the owner of the Bank of California, a trustworthy man, but he was still skeptical and thought it was a joke. He showed the message to Baron Rothschild, another financier, and at the time one of the richest men in the world, telling him it was a joke, but he said, don't be too sure about that. America is a very large country. It has furnished the world with many surprises already. Perhaps it has others in store. And with that, he immediately left back to the US. When he got to San Francisco, he met Arnold and Slack, the men who had discovered the mine. They wouldn't give the location, but they had taken a well-respected mining expert to it, and he watched them as they dug up diamonds. In San Francisco, the expert took them to several jewelers who checked them out and said they were worth a fortune. That got everyone super excited and eager to cash in on this diamond mine. So Harpending and Ralston invited Arnold and Slack to come with them to New York, where they would have an even fancier jeweler named Charles Tiffany confirm the value of the diamonds. The prospectors were a little uneasy though. They didn't know if they could trust these city folk, and they were worried that the diamonds might get stolen from them. But Ralston tried to calm them down by giving them $100,000 up front and promising another $300,000 if everything worked out. They agreed, and off they went to New York. When they got there, they had a big meeting with some of the city's top dogs, like generals from the Civil War and a famous newspaper editor. Tiffany checked out the diamonds and confirmed that they were the real deal. Everyone was excited and ready to go. So they wired Rothschild and some other rich men to tell them about the diamond mine and invite them to invest. But they wanted one more test. They asked Arnold and Slack to take another mining expert of their choosing to the site to double check that it was legit. They agreed, but they said they had to go back to San Francisco first. A few weeks later, they met up with a guy named Louis Janine, a top-notch mining expert in San Francisco. Janine was a natural skeptic and was determined to make sure the mine wasn't a scam. He went with Harpending, some other interested moneymen, and the prospectors on a wild goose chase through canyons to the mine. Once they got there, they watched Janine dig up the place and find all sorts of gems. Emeralds, rubies, sapphires, and tons of diamonds. After 8 days, he was convinced it was the real deal and told the investors they were sitting on a gold mine, or, a diamond mine. They went back to San Francisco and quickly formed a $10 million corporation with private investors. But they needed to get Arnold and Slack out of the picture, so they tried to convince the prospectors that it was better to take the money and run rather than get mixed up with the shady investors who would be in charge. The prospectors eventually agreed, took their cash, and handed over the rights to the mine. Word about the mine spread like wildfire, and everyone wanted a piece of the action. The investors started spending big money, out buying equipment and hiring the best people in the business. But when they went back to the mine, they discovered the terrible truth. There were no diamonds, rubies, emeralds, or anything. It was all a big hoax, and Harpending had accidentally led the world's richest men into the scam of the century. But how did they pull it off? Arnold and Slack had bought a big bag of diamonds, rubies, and sapphires in London, then spread them over a large plot of land. They also played dumb by allowing themselves to be bought out of their shares in the company. After all, guys who knew what they had would in no way sell their shares immediately when there was so much more guaranteed money to come in the future. Adin Ross is one of the biggest streamers in the world right now, but during the pandemic he was without a doubt the biggest streamer in the English market. His personality on stream was a mix of high energy, relatability, and his own sense of humor. He was a teenager making edgy and fruity jokes with his fans. He would take it like he dished it out, with no problem cracking jokes at himself and being an open book with his audience. However, there are times when this got Adin Ross into potentially dangerous situations when he first started. But over time, he would consistently create moments that his fans found funny, sometimes at the expense of his guests, and he did it all through playing a fool. Despite playing the jester, Adin Ross was really the ringleader of the circus, and one of the early moments where this was the case was when the song Who I Smoke was going viral. He rapped along to the song just like anyone else, but unknowingly dissed a lot of dead teens, and everyone else didn't have thousands of viewers who was singing along, so word got out to Julio Fulio, a part of the rival gang whose dead friends were dissed in the song, who got on an IG Live with Adin Ross, addressing the situation that the fans brought to his page, but letting Adin Ross know the severity of it, as well as saying he had no problems with him if he would just stop. However, Adin Ross didn't stop. While with his friends in a car, he would encourage them to sing along to the song again, not knowing that one of his friends was on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
Just cut this out. Who I smoke. Say it.
No!
Hell no, you ain't tripping.
Look, Ada, I'm not recording, I'm fucking live.
And alive, bro. Hey, Fulio, come get this nigga before he playing with your top.
Which made Fulio look dumb now, and on the internet. So he replied, "At Adin Ross, you think this stuff a joke. I tried to be nice and accept your apology. Just remember this. Don't call my phone trying to squash stuff either. It's up." Well, that wasn't the case because they ended up getting on IG Live once again, with Adin Ross apologizing again, with Julio Fulio eventually showing up on an Adin Ross stream at his house. One of Adin Ross's next victims would be popular Chicago rapper Polo G. YouTuber Zeus was scheduled to film some content with Polo G and brought Adin Ross along for a prank as an upcoming rapper playing that role. They would introduce him and have him kick a freestyle. Leaving Polo quite dazed as to what was going on, Polo G, just like most other rappers, is left quite blindsided and overwhelmed, like he just got hit with a flashbang. He's being filmed, albeit this isn't a live stream. He's clearly uncomfortable. He doesn't know how his fans are perceiving him being around someone acting like this, and if he lashes out and does anything physical, he's gonna lose anyway from the public opinion of Adin Ross fans for not being able to take a quote-unquote joke, although even though he didn't know who Adin Ross was at this point, the public opinion wouldn't favor him either. But what's a joke to some is serious to others. Adin Ross would continue to mess with Polo G on Instagram after this incident, following up the video they did with a comment saying, "Polo is so fine, bro," with Polo G responding, "Hey fo, stop playing, you going too far with that stuff now. You a grown man steady thinking that stuff funny." Adin Ross would go on live stream later and apologize to Polo G, explain to his stream that he didn't understand some people didn't find this funny or mess with it at all, and then eventually a year later putting the entire situation behind them and collaborating with Polo G on a stream together. However, less than a month after the Polo G freestyle video, he would link up with a Memphis street rapper, Moneybagg Yo. This one was a lot different from the Polo G interaction. It has the same setup as Adin being an up-and-coming rapper, but the outcome is different. Moneybagg is in a state of shock like some C4 outside the front door just exploded. But Adin continues while still toning it down a bit, temperature checking.
You're gonna have to buy me a purse, but not that's a purse. Wait, stop, wait a minute.
Moneybagg Yo wants to get the hell out of there. And then lastly,
Bone says I was a jit. Grab a toothpick, grab it, twist it like it's a dick.
Adin Ross went from freestyle, some sus bars about the individual with him, to just in general, and he still wasn't having it. Someone who isn't necessarily a rapper, although has a more successful rap career than the majority of artists ever will, a song eclipsing 150 million views titled Shake, is IShowSpeed. A former collaborator of Aiden Ross, he would appear on an E-Date stream with popular Instagram figure Ash Cash, where this infamous clip soon followed.
Hey, hold on, wait. All right, but look though, I got a psychological question, okay? Say if we the last two people on Earth and we had to reproduce to make the world continue, would you reproduce with me?
No, because that means our kids will have to intertwine and then their kids, no.
Who gonna stop me?
I will.
Who's gonna stop me?
This was the clip that eventually led to an underage Speed getting permanently banned from Twitch soon after, leaving him unable to appear on anybody's Twitch stream since those are the rules on that website. The slight problem with this was that Aiden Ross full well knew where this joke was going. I knew where it was going. The chat knew where it was going. The setup of this joke had been done before, not even a week prior, so Aiden Ross could have cut him off. Aiden knew that this was ban-worthy on Twitch, but he didn't do anything, and just let it play out. Does that mean he wanted Speed to get banned? Of course not. But this wasn't a good situation to put Speed or the guest in. He would just play the fool after and be upset with the ban and apologize to Ash Cash for Speed's behavior and comments, but this type of outcome was to be expected when he planned this entire thing. Everyone knows that. Aiden Ross did leave many rappers options, albeit limited. The hesitation from Moneybagg Yo and many other rappers who didn't mess with this energy comes from either being on Aiden Ross' stream in front of so many people and wondering how that would harm or help their public image, also probably not ever having encountered someone acting like Aiden Ross around them, not knowing if Aiden is intentionally trying to embarrass them or not, as well as knowing they won't look tough for attacking a young white kid on video. They might just look worse. The only options are to either leave and miss out on the clout, which at that point was an insane amount of clout, play along, which some rappers have done well. Examples are DDG, Ski Mask, Sheck West, Lil Yachty, and more, who already knew about Aiden to a degree, or completely lash out and beef with Aiden, which would just end up in your comments and DMs flooded with kids saying you can't take a joke. I don't believe Aiden Ross was intentionally trying to emasculate or embarrass these rappers. I think he was trying to maximize the content and level of entertainment for his viewers, and acting sus around people who didn't care is not as entertaining as doing it to someone who's from a rough environment that doesn't mess with that at all. Aiden Ross' trap card was always innocent. I had no idea. Oh, that bothers you? What I'm doing isn't normal? I'm just a dumb kid. All echoed through his body language, when he was in fact orchestrating everything and anticipating the reactions he was getting, and it worked. The toughest guys in hip-hop couldn't embarrass and get each other in uncomfortable situations like that, but Aiden Ross certainly could. Are there ever situations where appearing dumber than you actually are isn't a benefit though? Well, the reversal says the following. To reveal the true nature of your intelligence rarely pays. You should get in the habit of downplaying it at all times. If people inadvertently learn the truth, that you're actually much smarter than you look, they'll admire you more for being discreet than for making your brilliance show. At the start of your climb to the top, of course, you cannot play too stupid. You may want to let your bosses know, in a subtle way, that you're smarter than the competition around you. As you climb the ladder, however, you should to some degree try to dampen your brilliance. There is, however, one situation where it pays to do the opposite, when you can cover up a deception with a show of intelligence. In matter of smarts, as in most things, appearances are what count. If you seem to have authority and knowledge, people will believe what you say. This can be very useful in getting you out of a scrape.
Most kings get their head cut off.
One of the biggest capitalists and rapper, Jay-Z, has a lot in common with a communist German playwright who had to escape Germany during the National Socialist rule. Law 22 reads, "Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. When you're weaker, never fight for honor's sake. Choose surrender instead. Surrender gives you time to recover, time to torment and irritate your conqueror, time to wait for his power to wane. Do not give him the satisfaction of fighting and defeating you. Surrender first. By turning the other cheek, you infuriate and unsettle him. Make surrender a tool of power." But how did this communist even end up in America? Bertolt Brecht would be converted into the ideology of communism. He was raised Christian with a Catholic father and Protestant mother. His plays, essays, and poems would start to embody his belief of communism, and he tried to make his propaganda as strong and as evident as possible, which you may assume was not what Adolf Hitler and his party wanted when they took over the country. Despite not being Jewish, Brecht, alongside other communists, were in the crosshairs of the German government, and he had friends in the United States who sympathized with his beliefs, alongside other Germans who had fled. And in 1941, he decided to leave to the US, in particular Los Angeles, California, where he hoped to make a career in the film business. The next couple of years consisted of Brecht writing screenplays that were clearly anti-capitalist and without much success, and the war in Germany over, he decided to go back to Europe in 1947. There was just one problem. That same year, the US Congress House Un-American Activities Committee started investigating a communist infiltration in Hollywood. It gathered information on Brecht, who was open in his Marxism, and on September 19th of that same year, a month before he was supposed to leave, he got a subpoena to appear before the committee. Keep in mind, during this time the Cold War was really active. He wasn't the only one though. Other writers, producers, and directors were appearing, and this group would become known as the Hollywood 19. The Hollywood 19 would come together before going to Washington, D.C. to come up with a game plan. They decided on a confrontational approach. Instead of answering questions, they wanted to prepare statements that would challenge the authority of the committee and argue that it was unconstitutional. It could mean that they would end up in prison, but for them, it was going to be going down as a martyr and garner publicity for their cause. Brecht, on the other hand, was not on board with this. If they went to jail, they would lose their strength, which allowed them to spread their communist beliefs, the ability to stage their plays and sell their scripts for the coming years. He knew that they were smarter than the committee, so why even bother lowering themselves to their level and arguing back and forth with them? Keep in mind, they even had the authority. He wanted to outsmart them, appear like they were surrendering, but also mocking their authority unbeknownst to them. The Hollywood 19 heard what he was saying, but they decided to stick to their original plan, which boded terribly. They're known today as the Hollywood 10 because it was 11 out of the 19 that were called in front of the committee, one of which was Brecht, which left 10. And of those 10, none of them were able to work in Hollywood for many years to come. They were all convicted of contempt of court, with several unsuccessful appeals, handing out 1-year prison sentences, until one of them, Edward Dmytryk, decided to announce he was a communist and started snitching for an early release. What about Brecht? Well, on October 30th, he did the opposite. He wore a suit, which is something he'd never done before, smoked a cigar, because he heard the committee chairman loved them, and answered all of their questions politely, deferring to their authority. He answered the question of whether or not he belonged to the Communist Party with a no, something the others didn't, and it was true. When asked a follow-up, "Is it true you have written a number of revolutionary plays?" Knowing that he had written most of his plays with overt revolutionary communist propaganda, he said, "I have written a number of poems and songs and plays in the fight against Hitler, and of course, they can be considered, therefore, as revolutionary, because I, of course, was for the overthrow of that government." The answer went unchallenged. Despite being very good at speaking English, he used a translator the whole time, which allowed him wiggle room between languages. For instance, committee members found communist angles in lines from his English translated poems. He would repeat the lines in German for the translator, who would retranslate them, and they would come out innocent sounding. A committee member even read one of the poems out loud in English and asked him if he had written it, and Brecht simply replied,
"No, I wrote a German poem, but that is very different.
The answers left the committee befuddled, but his manners and deference to their authority made it impossible for them to get mad at him. After just an hour of questioning, the committee members had enough. They called him a good example to the other witnesses, and they not only freed him, but even offered their assistance if he had any trouble with immigration officials who might detain him for other reasons. The next day, he left the US, never to return again. He was able to continue creating work that espouses a message of Marxism, whilst the other members had their hands tied, stuck in America without work in their industry, and some even serving jail time. They would eventually be vindicated, but that would be years later, after they had missed out on so much income and lost the opportunity to spread their message. all because they couldn't surrender to people that they were smarter than. Back in 1996, Nas was supposed to show up to a recording session for Jay-Z's song Bring It On from his debut album Reasonable Doubt, but he didn't. The album would drop without Nas officially, but a producer sampled Nas' line from The World Is Yours, the Pete Rock remix, on another song, Dead Presidents 2. Nas' second album, It Was Written, would be released a month after, and in the intro track The Message, he would take lukewarm jabs at Jay-Z, rapping Lex with TV sets the minimum. Since Jay-Z loved dropping bars about Lexus throughout Reasonable Doubt, and while some may say this is a stretch, Nas would later admit that this was aimed at Jay-Z in an interview with Complex, saying, "I saw Jay-Z driving a Lexus with the TVs in them. I got rid of my Lexus at that point, and I was looking for the next best thing. It wasn't a shot at Jay, but it was just saying that's the minimum you gotta have. It's not a shot at him, but he inspired that line. It wasn't necessarily a shot at him, but because the song was a shot at everybody, he fell into that. But he definitely inspired that line." In 1997, Jay-Z would sample Nas again on the song Rap Game Crack Game, which wasn't insulting in any way, but on the song Where I'm From, people took the following as nudges. "I'm from where people pull your card and argue all day about who's the best MCs, Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas." And Jay-Z had called himself king in the song The City Is Mine. Signed to Jay-Z's label Rockefeller was Memphis Bleek, who was a strong contribution to the development of this tension with the song What You Think of That, where he raps, "My whole team rocks, we don't speak to cats, I'm a ball till I fall, what you think of that?" And Nas releases the song Nostradamus, directly addressing the Memphis Bleek lyrics on that song, saying, "I need an encore, y'all, you should welcome me back. You want a ball till you fall, I can help you with that." The next step is where things got to a point that there were no longer slight nudges. On the song My Mind Right, Memphis Bleek raps, "Your lifestyle's written, so who you supposed to be? Play your position. It's beef, I'ma see you, and bang till you hang up. Your life alive, but here's the truth. You ain't hyped to die, but you hyped to shoot." The first bar being a shot at Nas' album It Was Written. Nas would follow up with Stillmatic, taking on the whole rock crew. "Rip the freeway, shoot through Memphis with money bags, stop in Philly, order cheesesteaks and eat beans fast. Is he H to the Izzo, M to the Izzo?" Jay-Z would take things to another level at Hot 97's 2001 Summer Jam, where he took shots at Prodigy of Mobb Deep and Nas. "I don't care if you Mobb Deep, I hold triggers to cruise. You little Fs, I got money stacks bigger than you. When I was pushing weight back in 88, you was a ballerina, I got the pictures, I seen you. Ask Nas, he don't want it with Hove." The song Takeover would release on the Blueprint album, where he fully disses Nas on Kanye production throughout the entire track. Too many bars to drop here, but amongst them he says Nas has one hot album every 10 years, that he fell off and misses the fame, that he's garbage, and much more. Many at this point thought it was raps, and Jay-Z had cooked him. Takeover was a great song, and The Blueprint was a huge success as an album. Also keep in mind, this was very strategic. At this point, Nas was spending a lot of time with his mother, who had breast cancer and would pass away later in 2002. But when Takeover was released, he hadn't recorded any solo music material for his own albums in almost 2 years, just the QB compilation project. A funny story from this is Jungle, Nas' brother, was listening to The Blueprint and jumped out of his car in the middle of traffic to hop into Nas' car and forced him to listen to it. They convinced him to stop letting Jay-Z get these slick disses off and to hop back in the booth. Jay-Z thought he was putting down a wounded antelope, but Nas would come back with a song that would change the course of hip-hop forever, birthing a new term for any diss track to come after that would destroy their opponent: ether. Accusing Jay-Z of stealing his style, selling out for money, being in the game longer than him, going after his hustling past, and calling into question his gangster status, stealing his style from Biggie, and much more. This was a straight-up demolition, so much so that the next song Jay-Z replied with is largely forgotten in history by those who didn't grow up in that era, and that was Super Ugly, where Jay-Z revealed that he was having an affair with Nas' baby mother, Carmen Bryan, for 3 years. Jay-Z's own mother called him, saying he should apologize to Nas and his family, which he did. Mom put in a call and said, "That went too far, and she's never, ever called me about music." So I was like, okay, I'll go shut it down. Once again, I apologize. I felt like I didn't think about women's feelings, or Brian's feelings, or even my mom. It was really like, let me meet your level of disrespect with this level of disrespect. Even Dame Dash was upset with this apology, saying it made him look like he waved the white flag and surrendered. They were playing Super Ugly and Ether back-to-back on radio stations in New York, but the jury was out. Ether won, by a landslide. The beef would quiet down until The Blueprint 2 in 2002, where Jay-Z took shots at Nas on the intro track, questioning his background in the streets, so it wasn't completely over yet. Even after the apology he issued for the song Super Ugly, he would mention it, saying, "My mama can't save you this time. Y'all is history." Nas would follow up lightly with the song Last Real Nigga Alive, compared the beef with Jay-Z to Scarface, with Jay as Manolo and himself as Scarface, and that Jay-Z was nothing more than a bump on the road in the history of New York hip-hop. But after that, things would quiet down, with Nas pretty much getting the last word, and Jay-Z announced his retirement to be an executive at Def Jam after the massively successful The Black Album. Retiring at the top with a minor stain on your record of losing the beef was just something that Jay-Z couldn't stomach, and he would begin promoting a live show on October 18th, 2005, almost 3 years later, titled I Declare War. Sponsored by Power 105.1 and promoted for weeks, it sounded like Jay-Z was about to come back and settle the score with anyone he had problems with in the rap game, the chief amongst them, and everyone was looking at Nas. But during the concert, towards the end, Jay would say, "Now, this concert was called I Declare War, right? It's bigger than I Declare War." He would bring Nas on stage for a couple of songs, amongst them being Dead Presidents 2 that he sampled Nas on, which Nas rapped on live, and a couple of other songs, before they embraced and ended the feud. But Jay-Z was a lot like Brecht. Even during the apology, if you look back at the song Super Ugly, he made it appear like it was his mother that forced him to apologize for the beef. That he didn't decide it on his own accord to fall back, even somewhat blaming her on the intro song for Blueprint 2 like we showed earlier. Jay-Z benefited from having Nas as an ally now, but he wouldn't miss any opportunity to keep himself above him in the history books, and in business. He saw that he assisted Nas commercially from beefing. After all, that album sold very well. And if you guys remember in the song Takeover, when he rapped, "So yeah, I sampled your voice, you was using it wrong. You made it a hot line, I made it a hot song. And you ain't get a coin, you was getting F then. I know who I paid, God, Searchlight Publishing. Use your brain." Well, what was the next move on Jay-Z's playbook as a boss? And eerily similar to what Brecht might have done, Nas' record deal with Columbia Records was over a year later, and he signed with none other than Def Jam Records, whose president was Jay-Z. From playing him for not paying anyone but the publishing company, to now signing his career under him, a slick move. But even more slick was collaborating with him on the song Black Republican for his album Hip Hop Is Dead. That would be his second highest selling album ever first week, doing 355,000 copies, to which Jay-Z's company, Def Jam, was getting a big piece of. People trying to make a show of their authority are easily deceived by the surrender tactic. Your outward sign of submission makes them feel important, satisfied that you respect them. They become easier targets for a later counterattack, or for the kind of indirect ridicule used by Brecht. Measuring your power over time, never sacrifice long-term maneuverability for the short-lived glories of martyrdom. If it was purely rap, Nas historically would have been heralded in their home of New York City as above Jay-Z, especially after the beef. But Jay-Z surrendered. He made bigger business moves, sold more records, signed Nas to his own record label at this point, to which Nas would eventually start his own record label and media company Mass Appeal, get his own liquor endorsement with Hennessy around 2013, years after Jay-Z paved the way for both of those paths with Rockefeller, Def Jam, and his partnerships with Armand de Brignac and Duce. Had he continued trying to one-up and diss Nas, it would have came across as lame, demoting him to a rapper trying to claw back at a victory that he was never going to get, that Nas had long since moved past. But now the game was reframed to the rap mogul, and that's something that Nas is trailing far behind Jay-Z in. And keep in mind, the narrative has always shifted to Jay-Z's always taking shots at Nas, because this resurfaced when Nas' album Nasir dropped in 2018, and then the next day, Jay-Z's album The Carters with Beyonce Knowles would drop, clearly outselling him and leaving him behind. The unfortunate thing though is that both of those albums were largely forgettable, and many people don't even remember that album on Jay-Z's record list. The reversal of this law is interesting. The point of surrendering is to save your hide for a later date when you can reassert yourself. It is precisely to avoid martyrdom that one surrenders, but there are times when the enemy will not relent, and martyrdom seems the only way out. Furthermore, if you are willing to die, others may gain power and inspiration from your example. Yet martyrdom, surrender's reversal, is a messy, inexact tactic and is as violent as the aggression it combats. For every famous martyr, there are thousands more who have inspired neither a religion nor a rebellion, so that if martyrdom does sometimes grant a certain power, it does so unpredictably. More important, you'll not be around to enjoy that power such as it is. And there's finally something selfish and arrogant about martyrs, as if they felt their followers were less important than their own glory. When power deserts you, it is best to ignore this law's reversal. Leave martyrdom alone. The pendulum will swing back your way eventually, and you should stay alive to see it. And did the pendulum ever swing back Jay-Z's way? The first black billionaire in hip-hop, also the deal that he has with the NFL now, selling Tidal, buying it initially, and all the other big moves he's made. The unpredictability of fighting till the end instead of just cleverly surrendering to either reframe the entire battle to something else like Jay-Z did, defer your surrender being due to the respect for your mother and women as a whole, when the song dissed many women, appealing to morals, or in Breck's case just surrendering to be able to continue what you started elsewhere, are all far better outcomes than any martyr, because they allow for a reset button, as well as the opportunity to see the fruits of your labor at a later date. A beef can be career-ending if not handled properly, or, in even better situations, you may be able to continue operating, commercially at least, but your reputation is in such tatters that you'll never be looked at with the admiration like you once were. What do Dr. Dre and the richest banking family in history have in common? Incestuous business practices. Law 23 reads, concentrate your forces, conserve your forces and energies by keeping them concentrated at their strongest point. You gain more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper than by flitting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. When looking for sources of power to elevate you, find the one key patron, the fat cow who will give you milk for a long time to come. The Rothschild family of bankers and financiers have become the ire of many conspiracy theories and some facts in the modern era. But they started off in a tight-knit Jewish neighborhood in Frankfurt, Germany. They were very concentrated and they were self-reliant, almost never mingling outside of their own, and intent on preserving their culture and beliefs. Mayer Amschel was the first of their family to gain wealth in the late 18th century from lending money and understood how powerful being so tight-knit was. Mayer Amschel had allied himself with one family, the Princes of Thurn und Taxis. He made himself these princes' primary banker as opposed to trying to get many clients. He also trusted nobody who was an outsider of his community in the business, only employing his children and close relatives. The closer the family was, the stronger they would become, and in no time, 5 of Mayer Amschel's sons were running his business. And when he passed away in 1812, he did another thing out of the norm. He didn't name a primary heir. He decided to set up all of his sons to continue the family business, so they would stay united and would resist infiltration by outsiders into their business. While in control of the business, they knew that to grow their wealth, they would need to expand into the entirety of Europe, as opposed to being tied to any single country or prince. So one of the brothers moved to London, England, one to Paris, France, one stayed in Frankfurt, Germany, one moved to Vienna, Austria, and the youngest went to Naples, Italy. They could use this spread to concentrate their control on Europe's financial market. The problem with this is that a widespread network would open them up to the danger their father warned them about: division. And in order to combat that, what did they decide to do? Becoming the most powerful group in European finance and politics by excluding outsiders. They would have the fastest courier system in Europe, which let them get news of events ahead of any competitor, a monopoly on information with that level of speed. And all of their communication was written in Frankfurt Yiddish, a language that only they could understand. It was worthless to even steal because the only people that could translate it were on the same team as the Rothschilds. What about marriage though? That was a problem, because if they married outside, they would leave themselves open to other families understanding what was going on in their business, who could potentially betray them. Simple solution: incest. James Rothschild would marry his brother Solomon's, that went to Italy's daughter. They couldn't be happier, and this became the new family policy. A couple of years later, Nathan, the brother in London, married his daughter to Solomon's son, which was cousins, not the technical definition of incest, as it was with the first marriage being niece and uncle. But in the following years, 5 brothers would put together 18 marriages amongst their children, 16 of which were with first cousins. Many rich families of that time suffered and lost their wealth in the first half of the 19th century, but the Rothschilds persisted and grew their wealth during that time, still rich even until today. Without any literal incest involved, Death Row Records was co-founded by Dr. Dre and Suge Knight as the forefront, with 2 other founders who were less popular. They grew to massive popularity by focusing on a few key artists. The Chronic, released in 1992, brought Snoop Dogg into the game, amongst others like the Dog Pound, but in the spirit of keeping it in the family, this leverage was used to propel Snoop Dogg into his own solo career on Death Row with the album Doggy Style in 1993, who was then leveraged to release Dog Food in 1995, Corrupt and Daz Dillinger's album as the Dog Pound, which is not what they were referred to when they were features on The Chronic, but it made sense for the brand, and it was also a #1 album. Following that up with Tupac in 1996 releasing his album All Eyes on Me, Dr. Dre would soon depart the record label that same year, and it's important to note his philosophy of keeping the troops concentrated. At the time, Death Row even moved like a militia, always together, traveling together, recording together. But there were several members of Death Row that never got to release an album at all, and definitely not while Dr. Dre was still there. The DOC, who was a founder of Death Row in part, never released an album due to an accident he had. Michele never released an album on Death Row during Dre's tenure despite appearing multiple times on Death Row songs. Nate Dogg, RBX, Danny Boy, and Lady of Rage are some of the others who wouldn't release at all, and if one of them did, it was after Dr. Dre had departed. So Dre as a label owner was responsible for 3 unique artists who all had #1 albums: Snoop Dogg, The Dog Pound, and Tupac. The third one would be himself, which didn't go #1, but 3 of these 4 albums would be considered classics. Not bad. But after starting his own label, Aftermath Records, in that same year, things wouldn't change. Dr. Dre employed the same exact method of concentrating his forces, with the record label operating for 28 years now, and only 8 unique artists ever releasing an album on the record label. Also giving him the title of the most successful hip-hop record label of all time if we consider batting average. Because if we look at a list of how many artists released more than 1 album on Aftermath, the number drops to 4. Eminem, 50 Cent, Kendrick Lamar, and Anderson .Paak. Talk about concentrating your forces. Eminem was the first original new rapper that Dre brought onto the team. The Firm released their project The Album in 1997, which went #1, but that was a group composed by Nas, who was already a successful rapper that was signed to a separate label. He just brought his group to Aftermath. But with keeping it in the family, after Eminem's Slim Shady LP became a huge success, Dr. Dre would release 2001, featuring Eminem and others. Follow up with 2 more #1 Eminem albums in 2000 and 2002 with Marshall Mathers LP and The Eminem Show. So in the span of 3 years, other than Dr. Dre, Eminem was the only artist that released. It's important to note because everyone would have wanted to sign to Aftermath at the time, but quality control was in place. And also Rothschild-esque recruitment, because the next signing to Aftermath would be none other than 50 Cent, who was brought on through Eminem's Shady Records, and then The Game, that was brought in by 50 Cent via G-Unit. Busta Rhymes would have 1 album, The Big Bang, that went #1, and Truth Hurts released an album in 2002 that charted at #5, but that wasn't hip-hop, it was R&B, which is not what we're focusing on here. There wouldn't be another new release by a new rapper until 2012, with Kendrick Lamar that was discovered by Dr. Dre this time. Dr. Dre would pick up Anderson .Paak and start collaborating with him, eventually putting him on his 2015 album Compton, but he wouldn't put anything out via Aftermath until 2018 with his project Oxnard, and then everything after being on Aftermath as well. And in 2023, Easy Mill was signed via Shady through Eminem, but he's not dropped an album yet. None of these artists have missed, commercially either. Anderson .Paak was criminally underrated for a while, but with Silk Sonic, which that album is under Aftermath as well as Atlantic, he finally got his commercial success with a #1 record. Kendrick Lamar, #1s. The documentary by The Game, classic and #1. Eminem, too many #1s to count. 50 Cent, #1s. And Busta Rhymes' only album on Aftermath at #1. But he didn't always hit on artists. Dr. Dre has signed plenty of rappers to Aftermath. Just some of the names: Stat Quo, The Last Emperor, Eve, Justice being one of the more recent, Bishop Lamont, Joel Ortiz for a bit, John Connor, and many, many others who have never dropped a single project on Aftermath. It's not just a testament to Dr. Dre's taste-making, but his hands-on involvement with everyone that he's working with at any given moment. While there have been many signees coming in and out of Aftermath, they weren't all there at once. And while they were there, Dre was constantly working with them. And if he didn't feel it was up to par to release, or to position them as his next big star, he would abandon the project. Sometimes they would end up shelved, but a lot of them were dropped when they requested it. Dr. Dre took the opposite approach to a record label like Def Jam or many others who, when they had one or two successes, decided to expand their army, signing tons of artists, some failing, some succeeding, but having a bloated roster that couldn't be tended to by the executives, and in this case, the executive producer and genius that is Dr. Dre. And that's partially why we've seen him able to knock it out of the park time and time again for well over 30 years, even after having to start from scratch with Aftermath, while Suge Knight got to keep the superstar roster Dre helped sign, build, and produce for. And why Suge Knight wasn't able to get a single other star to match up since then. With Aftermath, nobody ever really knows what's going on either. Barely anything ever leaks, and that's how close-knit things are, like the Rothschilds. People thought Dre was working on Detox for the better part of a decade before he just came out with Compton. Most of the Kendrick Lamar projects, nobody knew what was going to happen with Damn on a sound level. Nobody even knows what Justice recorded with Dr. Dre while he was there, or the plans they had before parting ways. The reversal reads, tying yourself to a single source of power has one preeminent danger. If that person dies, leaves, or falls from grace, you suffer. In our case, this doesn't really apply. If an artist that is massively successful dies, in the case of Juice WRLD or XXX, their catalog multiplies in streams and value over time. The artist can rarely leave if they have strong contractual obligations, and if they fall from grace, it doesn't mean that their previous catalog is no longer valuable. Besides that, by the time they fall out of grace, an individual like Dre would have found someone or been brought someone by that particular artist who would be next up. And that's the important thing to keep in mind. A lot of executives get lost in the business and lose their ear to what's new, outsourcing that to A&Rs or other employees, but Dre has been, and always will be someone who is keeping himself close and listening to the developing sounds that are going on right now. What is hot, what's not, without losing his identity. The perfect example of that was Anderson .Paak, who in the mid-2010s sounded nothing like what Dr. Dre worked with before. But it was a sound and style that was modern and something that Dre, with his skill and identity, could see represent his branded vision. And it made sense. Tons of record labels sign people who are hot, can generate money, and sometimes can make good music too, but that isn't enough for Dre and even his protege Eminem too. If you see Shady Records, that roster has been and continues to be a taste profile of Eminem. And that's not something a lot of record label owners consider as they grow. And it might mean they make less money, but for them, the trade-off is beyond worth it. Other labels with broad rosters have a mix of different sounds. Jay-Z being a great example of that in the more modern day with Roc Nation. Even Rockefeller had far less longevity in their artists than Aftermath did, but with Roc Nation, artists like Vic Mensa, Jaden Smith, Willow, J. Cole, and Belly, just a couple of names, the entire spectrum of sound, and that's not including the singers signed to there too. But they're operating more as a massive business without concentrated forces anymore. And when you tell anybody about Roc Nation Records, not Roc Nation Management, which has people like Meg and Lil Uzi Vert, a lot of people will give you a blank stare and are unable to name even one artist signed. Because they haven't had any artists excel on a commercial level, minus J. Cole since he's been there since 2009, that can compete with other labels, or even a record label identity for that matter. But looking at the reversal, it does keep Roc Nation safe, profitable, and likely to exist for a much longer time. After all, the record labels that have lasted the longest have all left a particular genre and have signed and distributed everything from pop, rock, hip-hop, country, EDM, techno, and likely now even Latin. It is the smart business move, and it's really out of the norm that a near hip-hop only record label like Aftermath can not only exist, but flourish for almost 30 years. It may appear like everything is collapsing around Diddy, from losing his deal with Ciroc and Diageo, to stepping down from his media company Revolt TV, forced to pretty much. But if you're smart, you wouldn't count him out yet. Law 24 reads, play the perfect courtier. The perfect courtier thrives in the world where everything revolves around power and political dexterity. He has mastered the art of indirection. He flatters, yields to superiors, asserts power over others in the most oblique and graceful manner. Learn and apply the laws of courtiership, and there will be no limit to how far you can rise in the court. One of the most bizarre reactions to the allegations that were brought forth by Cassie, Diddy's ex-girlfriend of many years and one of his signees to Bad Boy Records, was by the music industry at large. Many people found it freaky that many voices that have had plenty to say about way smaller allegations against other people were nearly silent when it came to saying something about Diddy's heinous accusations. And it's all by Diddy's design. Great courtiers throughout history have mastered the science of manipulating people. They make the king feel more kingly. They make everyone else fear their power. They are magicians of appearance, knowing that most things at court are judged by how they seem. Great courtiers are gracious and polite. Their aggression is veiled and indirect. Masters of the word, they never say more than necessary, getting the most out of a compliment or a hidden insult. They are magnets of pleasure. People want to be around them because they know how to please, yet they never fawn nor humiliate themselves. Great courtiers become the king's favorites, enjoying the benefits of that position. They often end up more powerful than the ruler, for they are wizards in the accumulation of influence. One of the recurring questions throughout hip-hop has been, what does Diddy do? He's not necessarily a music producer, yet his name is all over songs that are massive hits across multiple decades, on top of releasing his own music and executive producing projects here and there. Diddy is a courtier, through and through. He started off throwing parties whilst in college at Howard University, then left college to become an intern directly for Andre Harrell, founder of Uptown Records. Diddy would quickly rise through the ranks at Uptown Records, helping to bring on acts like Jodeci and Mary J. Blige, as well as earning the trust of Andre Harrell at a very young age. I was like a wonder kid at Uptown. The first record I produced sold 2 million copies, and I'd only produced it because the producer didn't show up. My talent is definitely a gift. I don't understand where it comes from. I don't play an instrument, and I never went to school for music production, but I know exactly how a song should sound and how to give an artist direction. But things wouldn't always be smooth sailing. Heavy D was an artist signed to Uptown Records, and in 1991, Diddy was promoting a charity basketball game at the City College of New York in Harlem that Heavy D was supposed to perform at. There was a venue capacity of 2,700 people, but Diddy oversold the event and there were 5,000 people in attendance. Security would close the gym when they reached capacity, which frustrated all the people outside, who pushed their way in, a stampede ensued, and 9 people died, with 29 people injured. The mayor of public safety made a statement and blamed this on Puff, stating that he didn't hire the proper personnel for the event, and if he had gotten the right people, this would have never happened. He didn't receive criminal charges, but got tons of lawsuits from people's families who died that day, and he settled immediately to quiet the noise. Keep in mind that this incident was only 5,000 people, with 9 dead. Travis Scott's Astroworld was approximately 55,000 people, with 10 dead. Yet, most people don't even know this about Diddy's past or associated with him, unless they grew up during that time. Social media wasn't really a thing at the time to spread it, but Diddy knew, even at the young age of 22 when this happened, that the press of ongoing lawsuits related to mass deaths at an event of his was something he needed to prevent at all costs. And like a smart courtier, it worked out in his favor. In 1993, Puff would be fired from Uptown Records. There are numerous different reasons that have come up during the years. According to Diddy, I was very passionate and I didn't understand protocol or workplace politics. So I got fired because there can't be 2 kings in one castle. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to Andre, but I was fighting so hard. He wanted to be more diplomatic and to make sure everybody felt involved. Getting fired was one of the best things that could have happened to me. This is a look into Diddy's psyche as a courtier. He mismanaged the balancing act between asserting power over others and yielding to superiors. And just look at the language that he used here as well. Political, diplomatic, make sure everyone felt involved, 2 kings in one castle. This is a look into Diddy's psyche as a courtier. He mismanaged the balancing act between asserting power over others and yielding to superiors, a mistake he would never make again. Just look at the language and wording he uses. Things like, I got fired because there can't be 2 kings in one castle. Politics, protocol. He wanted to be more diplomatic, getting everyone involved. But he had already gained all the benefit from it, as we'll soon see. At this point, Diddy's only 24 years old. He had spent 3 years at Uptown Records, going from intern to pretty much executive and putting out some of the hottest records ever. Built up tons of connections and had a reputation for spotting talent. The reason for this firing, according to Harrell, I fired Puff only to make him rich. I didn't want to sit there and be the one confining Puff because the corporation was telling me to do that. I'm not built that way. I told Puff he needs to go and create his own opportunity. You're red hot right now. I'm really letting you go so you can go and get rich. I think both of these can be true at the same time. There was also talks that Notorious B.I.G. was having problems releasing his debut album with Uptown Records because their distributor thought it was too unfiltered with lyrics about street life. Diddy decides to start his own record label and take Biggie with him, but for this he needed a partner, someone with the money to help fund the operation. And that would be music industry legend Clive Davis, founder of Arista Records, and who has signed or developed acts like Pink Floyd, Whitney Houston, Aerosmith, and many others. They would form Bad Boy Records with distribution with Arista, and Biggie and Craig Mack would soon release hit singles, and a year later in 1994, the massively successful Biggie album, Ready to Die. Another thing that was odd was the Flavor Camp thing with Usher, who was sent by L.A. Reid when he was just 14 years old to live with Diddy.
And I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy thing. Now, that was L.A. Reid's idea, right? We're sending you
New
over
York
to
City.
something called Puffy Flavor Camp.
There you go.
To learn some...
Flavor Camp!
Yeah,
Flavor
that's what it
Camp.
was called.
Hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you seeing?
I went there to see the lifestyle.
Right.
And I saw it. But I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at.
When asked if he would send his son there, he said,
You're a dad now. Would you ever send your kid to Puffy Camp?
Hell no.
And then Diddy misremembering his age at the time.
Back in the days when he was like 10 and I was a little bit older, his older brother, we used to fight over the Frosted Flakes before pause was invented. You know what I'm saying? But it's my brother for real. We used to actually wrestle off of the Frosted Flakes. He used to always get up early with me. Now he's one of the richest stars in the world. And
Nobody's going to acknowledge this but me. Puff just said we used to wrestle over the Frosted Flakes, and we're streaming live. That was stupid.
Which is funny because this is something that Usher has really never talked about again and kind of got brushed under the rug. And why wouldn't Usher talk about it again when he had spoke about it before? Well, to protect Diddy, of course, and Diddy had done him a lot of solids in the past years. Then there was the 1994 shooting of Tupac at Quad Studios. In an interview in 1995 with Vibe magazine, he would accuse Sean Combs, which is Diddy, Biggie, and Jimmy Henchman of setting it up. At this time, Pac and Biggie were friends, and looking up before he gets into the studio room, he notices a friend of Biggie's that hollered at him, and before the elevator comes down, 3 guys run down on Pac, pull out their guns, trying to rob him and his crew. But he believed the robbery was just a setup and the shooting was the intention, because the only person that shots were directed at were Pac. One other person got hit with a bullet, but that's just because it went through Pac. So we jumped in the elevator and went upstairs. I'm limping and everything, but I don't feel anything. It's numb. When we get upstairs, I looked around and it scared the hell out of me. The interviewer asks, why? Because Andre Harrell was there, Puffy was there, Biggie. There were about 40 people there, all of them had jewels on, more jewels than me. I saw Booker and he had this look on his face like he was surprised to see me. Why? I had just beeped the buzzer and said I was coming upstairs. Nobody approached me. I noticed that nobody would look at me. Andre Harrell wouldn't look at me. I had been going to dinner with him the last few days. He had invited me to the set of New York Undercover, telling me he was going to get me a job. Puffy was standing back too. I knew Puffy. He knew how much stuff I had done for Biggie before he came out. But this is an incident that we don't even really remember when it comes to Tupac. People just associate Pac's death, of course, but there was this shooting too. In 1999, Diddy and his crew allegedly assaulted TV host Rogelio Mills, also known as Roger Mills, after he asked if Diddy had any involvement in Biggie's death. This was a widespread rumor at the time, so everyone would look at him crazy if he didn't at least ask it. But it got Diddy so furious that he ended the interview, stormed off the set, and someone from Diddy's team came up to Mills offering to buy the footage from the incident. Mills denied this, and as he's walking to his car with the camera in his hand, he gets approached by Diddy's people, and they start to tell him to give him the tape. He refuses, so they basically force it off of him, kind of beat him up, destroy the camera and the tape on the spot. A criminal investigation in Detroit ensues, and while the police verified that the incident did in fact happen, they weren't able to identify who beat him up, so they couldn't bring charges. Roger was trying to reach out to Diddy for an apology to resolve the situation, which didn't happen, so he filed a lawsuit, a civil one against Diddy. Diddy settled and paid him out almost immediately. Now think about it. Diddy was already willing to pay for the footage. He just didn't want that to get out there. So the guy gets beat up, roughed up, they destroy the footage. The guy wants an apology. Diddy doesn't want the incident. Diddy doesn't even want people to know the incident happened. So of course he's not going to give him an apology. The guy issues a lawsuit asking for some money. Diddy's going to settle and give him some money because he was willing to give him money in the first place for this to never get out. And once he settles, the guy doesn't really talk about it, so it doesn't get out. Win-win situation for Diddy. How better to flatter and assert power over others than by bigging up their artistry, appearing in their music videos, buying them lavish gifts and cars, and charging them for all of this on the back end with alleged exploitative deals. Just some of the artists to complain about their record deals with Bad Boy Records were The Lox, who even had a Free The Lox campaign in the late 90s to get them released, and they were let go from Bad Boy to join Rough Riders. He would quickly let them go, which is something Diddy always does. When a story seems like it could get too big to harm his reputation or business, he complies. Mace was another individual who retired at the height of his fame, but when he was trying to come back, he was having contractual issues with Bad Boy and saying that Diddy held him back. Faith Evans has taken subtle shots in interviews and in her book about the financial discrepancies she saw during her career with Bad Boy despite the success she had. Whenever Diddy is faced with addressing these claims, he has always had a similar response, denying it and saying that he was someone who provided opportunities and supported his artists by helping them launch their careers in an industry where not many people make it. He also didn't do much to try and quell this narrative because it didn't really harm his business. These complaints about record contracts are an industry-wide thing, so it didn't specifically make Diddy's brand look bad or harm his potential brand opportunities. The same year as the Roger Mills incident, 1999, was the infamous club shooting. Diddy was dating Jennifer Lopez at the time, and Shine was a rapper that was signed to Bad Boy. They were all at this club when some scuffle ensues involving Diddy's crew after Diddy bumps into this guy named Scar that knocks the guy's drink out of his hand. The guy gets upset, pushes Diddy, shouting match, and another group of people joined from Scar's side that escalated into a shooting with multiple injuries. Reportedly, Puff and Shine drawing their guns first. The police pull over Diddy, Jennifer Lopez, and their driver that night, arresting all of them. J-Lo gets released without any charges, and the driver tells police that Diddy tried to bribe him to say that the gun in the car was his, typical courtier activities. Shine was charged with attempted murder, assault, and reckless endangerment. The prosecution argued that Shine fired a gun during the incident and he decided to take it to trial. In 2001, Shine was convicted of 2 counts of assault, reckless endangerment, and gun possession. He was acquitted of attempted murder, but was sentenced to 10 years in prison and then deported to Belize. Diddy was charged in connection with the shooting, facing allegations of illegal gun possession and bribery. The bribery charge was related to allegations that he offered his driver money to claim ownership of the weapon found in the vehicle after fleeing the scene. Diddy took it to trial too, with a high-profile lawyer, and was acquitted of all charges. Diddy also faced civil lawsuits from victims of the shooting afterwards. It's reported that he settled these suits out of court, although the details and amount of the settlements were not publicly disclosed. This was done very quietly and low profile, something that became Diddy's MO even until this day. And it's something that's very smart and courtier of him, is that he doesn't have an ego when it comes to these things. A lot of people would say, I'm not settling, this isn't real, I'm gonna beat this in court, I'm gonna fight this off the principle of it. But Diddy knows that regardless, he's gonna spend money, and it's going to harm him if it stays public because his image is his brand, is his business. Years later though, Shine would call out the behavior of Diddy and actions by him and his legal team during the trial that he felt helped convict him but set Diddy free. This was in reference to a woman that was working the club that night who claimed she fell on top of Puff during the shooting and that he did not have a gun. She told the jurors that it was Shine who first opened fire in the club. Shine's lawyers were also on Diddy's payroll at Bad Boy Records, and Shine would later even complain about their competency to the judge. Think about it. Would a courtier sell out his unproven new artist for a guaranteed prison sentence if it meant keeping his record clean? It would definitely be a smart and tactical political move to make it seem like your artist was the one that was crazy and wilding out, whilst you were just trying to maintain peace and didn't mean harm to anyone. Very soon after this, Diddy would have a name change, which he would do later in his career too. He went from Puff Daddy, that is in this case the Roger Mills incident, the deaths at the college show, to P. Diddy, a fresh and positive rebrand. including the way he responded to Shine's allegations while he was serving his prison sentence. Just from what we've seen thus far, in the public, and there are countless other stories I can bring up too, Diddy is a courtier through and through. So if he was able to effectively clean his brand, change names multiple times, to the point where prior to this Cassie thing, what he was known for by the majority of people was Ciroc, and perhaps being sus and gay rumors, with most people not associating any of the actual bad things he was involved in, such as the crowd crush deaths, Shine case, multiple violent encounters, dare I say countless violent encounters, then you can tell any rumors around him he either allowed to float or amplified them. Think about it, the Tupac accusation was so big that you can't really quell that one. And it doesn't harm him because only people deep in hip-hop even think that Diddy ordered Pac's death. And even then, it makes him look tough and menacing, which is a pro in hip-hop. The sus rumors, I think, are there to divert attention from things he has actually done, so I think he just allows them to go around. Kind of like a smokescreen, which has been effective, and the closest thing we've heard to Diddy actually engaging directly with men was the Cassie stuff. And while that was very disturbing, and I would say even past sus, he didn't physically interact with the dudes. Diddy is always quick to settle court cases, uplifts people he think will benefit him and grow to powerful positions later, allegedly greases pockets like he was willing to do for the footage from the interview where he stormed off, the driver the night of the club shooting, and the hotel that he allegedly paid $50,000 for footage of him allegedly abusing Cassie. It's no wonder that the majority of the industry decides to do the Will Smith meme and look away when this happens. If you're counting Diddy out right now, you're mistaken. It hasn't even been 3 months and the majority of people have moved past this story. He'll have a canned response for any future interviews, and whilst he's lost a lot of deals, it's nothing that time and people forgetting can't heal. Just remember, Mike Tyson at one point served prison time for SA. He has tons of brand deals now. And Diddy has zero tangible proof against him or charges of anything. And now Cassie is paid to shut up for the rest of her life. Travis Scott lost all of his deals after the Astroworld incident. They all popped back up about 1.5 years, 2 years after. But had Diddy not moved like a courtier these past several decades and treated the wrong people poorly, or the non-powerful people poorly, there would be a committee ready to take him down. But he treated the right people poorly, or allegedly took advantage of them, and made the people who mattered and had power to ever harm him or take him down, made sure they were taken care of and respected. Great courtiers are gracious and polite. Their aggression is veiled and indirect. We have heard of countless incidents of Diddy being involved in violence, whether it was slapping someone, beating someone up, shootings, hitting the head coach with a kettlebell at the college that his son was playing in. But we have never seen it with our own eyes. And when we have seen Diddy in media interviews and in front of us, he's always nothing but polite and gracious, even funny at times, and just giddy. They are magnets of pleasure. People want to be around them because they know how to please. Pause. Yet they neither fawn nor humiliate themselves. Diddy was most known for his parties. From his college days, even until prior to Cassie with the, quote, party parties. We don't know how that will continue, but someone has to be a magnet of pleasure for everyone in the industry to not only want to be at his parties, but also be around him or work with him for the past 30 years.